Customers from across India and the world have been leaning on us for over 75 years. Blue Star, built on trust.
Just quality. Good evening, everyone. Am I audible?
Yes, Amrita, we can hear you.
Okay, great.
Yeah, Amrita. Can you hear me, Amrita?
Yes, I can. Thank you. We'll
Thank
start in about a minute or two.
you.
So
Okay.
just remain joined, all of you. Thank you. Welcome, everyone, to the Women Nation Summit. I would like to request Ms. Ranjana Maitra to please start with the sessions and the proceedings. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Amrita. Good evening, everyone, and a warm welcome today. Thank you so much for joining us today for the sixth edition of CII Western Region Indian Women Network Women Nation Summit. The theme for this year is Rising Again, and I think it's very, very apt. I would like to invite Ms. Preeti Reddy, Chairperson, CII IW and Western Region, for a welcome and opening remarks. And I would like to briefly introduce Ms. Reddy, though she needs really no introduction. Preeti is currently the chairwoman of Kantar's South Asia Insights Division. She has over 3 decades of experience in consumer marketing, research, and consulting over a gamut of industries: FMCG, durables, retail, and services. Previously, Preeti was CEO of Kantar LMRB in Sri Lanka. She holds an honors degree in economics from Delhi University and an MBA from XLRI. For the last 5 years, Preeti has been chosen from over 500 women professionals across the industry as one of Impact's 50 most influential women professionals in Indian media, marketing, and advertising. What an achievement! Currently, she's chair of Region India Network, Women's Network, and is a great inspiration for all of us. I warmly welcome Preeti and invite her to deliver her opening remarks. Over to you, Preeti. Thank you.
Thank you, Ranjana. I think from the time that we last spoke, it's become almost 4 decades of experience. So I've really been in this business a long time. I'm a very warm welcome to everyone who's here with us today. And CII, IW, and the Indian Women's Network uh, is a one-of-a-kind platform to support women, for women to discuss issues, opportunities, challenges at workplaces, and to learn from each other. And Women Nation is the Western region's flagship event. It gives me great pleasure to again say that, like Ranjana had said, that this year is the sixth year of the summit, and that the summit has grown in reach and relevance every year. It is a gathering of powerful, influential, interesting, and inspiring women from all walks of life, whether they're speakers or they're panelists or are members of the audience. Having said that, it's heartening to see male participation as well, and that is also increasing every year. And I deeply appreciate your presence here today. As someone who has spent so many years in the corporate world, I can confidently say that for all of us who are leading businesses, organizations, departments, for all of us, diversity and inclusion have become a natural and critical consideration for anything that we do. There is still a lot to be done, but we now almost automatically seek to include participation and engagement of women across, whether it is meetings or committees or groups or any other activity, and that is really a welcome change. For Women Nation, we try every year to select a theme that echoes relevance from the perspective of business, the economy, and society. The theme this year, which is Rising Again, we felt was particularly topical given what the world and what India has gone through at a time when the COVID pandemic dominated and disrupted our lives. The pandemic changed lives completely, whether it was business or professional or personal, whether we were youth in colleges or schools, whether we were captains of industry or whether we were homemakers. Such times test the true potential of human beings and our natural resilience and survival instincts. We are resilient, we are survivors by nature, and times like these test us even more. I will actually go further and say that the role of women was never as challenging as in the current time. Women across the world have always played multiple roles, multifaceted roles, and we do a tremendous balancing act. This was never as important or as difficult as it is in the current times. In a way, the journey for women since last year was to rediscover, regroup, and reorient ourselves with the new normal and thrive again in the face of adversities, fulfilling professional commitments, personal commitments, while also taking care of our health and of that of our families. Reports suggest that by now over 75% of India's population has already been afflicted with COVID. Therefore, healthcare remains a priority for women, for themselves, for colleagues, and for their loved ones. So the theme Rising Again encompasses all this, our ability to rise phoenix-like in the face of challenge and adversity. This year, like last year, this is a virtual event, but this year we've spread it over 2 days with a slightly different focus on each day. Today on day one, we have with us senior women leaders who will share their journey, their experiences, and also their thoughts on having risen again, on meeting challenges, on not only overcoming them, but also thriving despite them. IWN is also a platform for capability building to develop and strengthen professional and personal skills. In keeping with that, day two focuses on capability building and on learnings from other women on how to do things like build a personal brand, how to build professional networks and support systems. Finally, many women and organizations played the role of good citizens and helped thousands of other women and families to survive the loss caused by COVID. For the first time, the summit this year aims to recognize and felicitate such nurturing women and nurturing organizations, social enterprises and corporate organizations that have shown compassion towards women and towards humanity this year. This year, we also have international sessions with country partners, Sweden and Australia, sharing interesting insights and discussions. So all in all, a power-packed 2 days. I hope you find the 2 days interesting, and we would love to have your participation in all the sessions as well as your feedback. With this, I now invite Vaishali Nigam Sinha, Chairperson, CII National Committee on Women Empowerment and IWN, to deliver the theme address. Vaishali, a brief introduction before I hand over to you. Vaishali is the Chief Sustainability, CSR, Communications and Officer at Renew Power, which is India's largest renewable energy IPP, independent power producer. She has a master's in public policy from Columbia University. And after a decade on Wall Street and then London as an investment banker, she returned to India, where after several years in banking, she is now a social entrepreneur. Apart from being a strong advocate of equal participation of women in economic activities, Vaishali is also passionate about climate change, women's entrepreneurship, and leadership. She's been a speaker at multiple international forums. She's a president's invitee to Columbia World Projects. Vaishali is deeply engaged with industry bodies, think tanks, and educational institutions. A long list of them. It will take me a whole day to read this out. She chairs the CII Northern Region Committee on CSR and Affirmative Action and the CII Task Force on making NCR less polluted. She's also on the advisory council of the CII ITC Center of Excellence for Sustainable Development. Ms. Vaishali is a recipient of the CSR Leadership Award 2015 at the National Awards for Excellence in CSR and Sustainability. This introduction does not even begin to cover all of her achievements and responsibilities. I could go on and on, but I will stop here so she can speak to you herself. Welcome, Vaishali, and thank you for taking the time out to deliver our theme address.
Thank you, Preeti. Thank you, and apologies for that long introduction you had to present. Perhaps I need to abridge it a little bit more. But I'd like to congratulate the organizers for putting this event together. Ranjana and Preeti, all of you. It's just a great event for women to gather and talk, engage, and I guess just have that sense of sisterhood and engagement with even men in the industry, and try and put on the table issues which are so important, which we really don't realize, perhaps not necessarily sensitized to the challenges which lie ahead in a post-COVID world. So rising again indeed is a very apt session, summit, a hashtag which you're using, because honestly, it's going to take a lot for many women to rise. If we look at a lot of the surveys which are being done and analysis around what women are actually facing in a post-COVID world, it's not a great story. It's not very encouraging, and we just have to think about the average set and what are the different activities and actions different stakeholders need to take to make sure that they actually rise. And that's what we're all working towards, to ensure that women rise as much as they can at the workplace. That's what IWN is doing. That's what all of us, I guess, want to see, and at least an equal sort of split between men and women at the workplace, if not more. And so I guess the question is, what is going to make that happen? Are we all aware of it? Are we all sensitized? Are we reflecting on it? So that we can then figure out what are the top things to address, so that the return to work in a post-COVID world is more pleasant, more engaged, more promising. And, we just don't go back a couple of steps, because each step takes many years. And based on what I hear and see, while a few women are ready to come back to work, not everybody has the support system to be able to do what is required to get back to work in a kind of energetically, and to be there to compete and to excel and to succeed as a professional. So these are things which I think we should all be talking about. We should be finding solutions to, and engaging with the institutions and stakeholders to find answers to. It's been a pretty interesting and a set of mixed emotions. If you look at what women have been facing over the last few months. One is, there's been a sense of comfort around convenience of working from home. And that was felt very much when all of us were working from home. So but then that feeling was momentary. Because once you settled to work at home, and you actually lived in an environment where you didn't really have a support system, it was not only working from home, and I've said that a few times, it was working for home. And so everybody was working, but you were working for work and you were working for home as well. And that's really taken a toll on women. And it has taken a toll, and it continues to take a toll, and often, and in many cases, it's reset to that, right? So you are working a lot, many more hours at work and for work. And there is a lot more to be done with the children at home, with the entire families at home. There's a lot more which has to be done by women. Unfortunately, we'd like it to be shared. But if you take the surveys and talk to women, that's not necessarily the case. So I think women are finding, as we again refer to some of the surveys, I think Deloitte did one, which was a pretty intensive one, that a lot of women, many women are finding it difficult to get back to work. And we really need to make sure that organizations, corporates, platforms like IWIN, etc., we do our bit to ensure that we can help various stakeholders to ensure that the return of women to work happens is for real, and we are persistent to make sure that we support women in this post-COVID world where they must come back, and we need to move ahead to ensure that we are moving towards greater engagement of women at work and I guess greater parity at the workplace, which we've all really worked hard for. So I know we've got a pretty power-packed couple of days with sessions and participation by eminent experts. So I'm sure we will be touching on this topic and hopefully finding solutions. And I'd request that whatever is discussed, analyzed, and concluded, we should share it with the entire network so that the learnings are shared learnings, which we all can then perhaps also think about accelerating at a corporate level to the extent it's possible through the membership network, or even at a policy level, if it's possible. I'd be very happy to do my bit and work with IWIN at the national region and the regions to see we can, make sure we are actually addressing the problems upfront so that it does not become systemic as we march ahead. So let's just focus on some of these activities. IWIN is doing some great work around, capacity building, mentorship, and a lot of the work which is required for women to engage and do well at the workplace, even starting from, I would say, colleges and, urban areas, rural areas. It's a pretty much like a, across the spectrum approach. So, there's a lot to be, I would say, tapped to be able to make the most of what we're trying to do with respect to platforms for mentorship, etc. And also for just conversations around mental health. There is a lot of information out there. So I think this platform of women need to connect to ensure we share this information not only with this group but with the circle outside of this group, so that some of these support systems and facilities which exist can be well understood and shared with others as well, and hopefully we can find solutions to some of the emerging problems we are seeing in a post-COVID world. With that, I'd like to wish all of you the very best and all the best for a very engaging session. And I look forward to perhaps reading the outcomes of these 2 days, which I'm sure promise to be very, very fruitful. Thank you. Back to you, Preeti.
Yeah, thank you, Vaishali. I think what really stood out for me, thank you for that really inspiring speech. What really stood out for me was the fact that we have to make sure that this does not become a 2 steps backward for the cause of women, and it has to not become a systemic issue. We need to, the support that we're giving each other has to be in fact intensified, if anything else. And yes, we will share all the learnings from here with the whole network. Thank you, Chef Vishali, and I'm now going back to my
just one more thing. Yeah, I had a hard stop at 5:30, so if you would excuse me then, but I'd like to wish all of you the very best. Thank you.
Thanks, Vishali. Thank you for being here. Yeah, Ranjan.
Thank you, Vaishali. Thank you very much, Preeti. And I have great pleasure in inviting Ms. Priyanka Chaturvedi for the session and to deliver her keynote address. Let me take a few moments to introduce Ms. Priyanka Chaturvedi and take you all through her very illustrious career. I think she needs no introduction, but I still need to do that so that all of us get a recap of what great work that she has done. Ms. Priyanka Chaturvedi is a Rajya Sabha MP from Shiv Sena, Maharashtra. She is also the deputy leader and national spokesperson of Shiv Sena. She is a member of the Parliament Standing Committee of Commerce and member of Consultative Committee on External Affairs. Ms. Priyanka is a regular on television channels debating on various issues on Indian politics, women empowerment, child rights, education, and health. We have all seen that, and I'm a great follower of you, Priyanka ji. Ms. Priyanka began her political journey as an assembly delegate of the Indian Youth Congress in 2009 with no political background. She became a part of Youth Congress and closely worked with them during her tenure, and she went on to become a district general secretary, IYC. She was a part of ISB's 10,000 Women Program, a scholarship program by Goldman Sachs for women entrepreneurs. Priyanka's book review blog was also amongst the top 10 blogs on books in India. Priyanka has been honored with an award for excellence in the field of work and for being amongst the top 50 inspirational women in Maharashtra at a women's leadership symposium. Women's Economic Forum conferred her with Iconic Women Award this year. She is currently on the advisory board of Female First Foundation, a women advocacy group working to bring more women participation in leadership roles, and also Kautilya School of Public Policy based in Hyderabad. And this school endeavors to provide the best training and mentoring to those who wish to pursue public policy in the nation or overseas. I can go on and on, but I will stop here because we want to hear from her. We have indeed great pleasure in inviting Ms. Priyanka Chaturvedi to deliver her keynote address. Thank you. Over to you, ma'am.
Ranjana, she'll just log in a couple of minutes. I think she's had some technical issues. So we'll just wait
Sure,
for
we'll
a couple of minutes. Yeah.
To join the urgent battle against the pandemic, CII worked relentlessly with government and industry on policy advocacy, vaccination, oxygen and critical equipment, resolving industry issues, relief and rehabilitation, and communication and outreach. CII submitted recommendations on restrictions on economic activity to ensure the safety of workers and the community. Many states undertook strict lockdowns and curtailed social and economic activities. Many suggestions were made for ECLGS, extension of tax and statutory deadlines, moratoriums and relaxations in working capital assessment. CII inputs were progressively included in the government's vaccination strategy. CII has worked on vaccination of the workforce in enterprises and helped healthcare providers access supplies. Providing suggestions to ensure fast movement of oxygen tankers, CII helped in import of concentrators, ventilators and cylinders. It also suggested many policy inputs for improving logistics. CII interacted with chief ministers and officials on matters such as continuation of factories, movement of goods and passes for employees. Its extensive interactions helped facilitate industry in many areas. CII state offices, CII Foundation, Young Indians and affiliated associations worked with state governments and district administrations to provide a range of necessities. CII helped to set up 11 COVID care centers, including a 500-bed center in Kochi and a 200-bed center in Gurugram. 2 tele-ICUs were also implemented in Maharashtra and Haryana. CII women exemplars helped provide rations to vulnerable communities. With COVID-appropriate behavior an imperative, CII undertook a massive communication program. The dedicated CII COVID website and newsletters kept members informed about the situation. CII continues to work with the nation and industry to fight the battle against COVID-19.
Throughout our 75-year history, we have been pioneers in understanding people and adopting new technologies to help us do that. The first to use facial recognition in advertising testing. The first to use people meters to measure TV audiences. The first to migrate to online interviewing. New technology today comes in different forms, from biodata and biometrics in healthcare to capturing human sentiment and even voting intentions by analyzing social media, in using telemetry to enhance our understanding of customer experiences, piloting apps to measure out-of-home consumption, deploying audio recognition to measure media consumption on multiple devices, and most dramatically perhaps in exploiting big data, artificial intelligence and analytics to enable us to predict attitudes and behavior. But ours is a business where we use technology and data in pursuit of a goal, to inspire our clients, our people and society to create and flourish in an extraordinary world. And in doing so, some things won't change. Asking the right questions, listening hard, understanding better than anyone else the way people live, think, feel, vote, shop, watch and post. The desire to understand human needs and motivations has been around for centuries and will continue to define our purpose in the years to come.
Customers from across India and the world have been leaning on us for over 75 years. Blue Star, built on trust.
A warm welcome to Ms. Priyanka Chaturvedi. And I think that we had some issues logging in. I had introduced you earlier, but I will just take a few more lines to introduce you again. Thank you very much for being with us here today. As I said before, to all the audience, but I will, since Ms. Chaturvedi is live just now, I'll just take a few moments to introduce her once more. Ms. Priyanka Chaturvedi is a Rajya Sabha MP from Shiv Sena, Maharashtra. She's also the deputy leader and national spokesperson of Shiv Sena. She's a member of the Parliament Standing Committee of Commerce and member of Consultative Committee on External Affairs. She's a regular on television channels debating on various issues on Indian politics, women empowerment, child rights, education and health. And all of us have seen her on television doing it brilliantly. And she began her political journey as an assembly delegate of the Indian Youth Congress in 2009 with no political background whatsoever. And she became a part of the Youth Congress and closely worked with them during her tenure. And she went on to become a district general secretary, IYC. Priyanka's book review blog was also amongst the top 10 blogs of books in India. She has been honored with an award for excellence in the field of work and for being amongst the top 50 inspirational women in Maharashtra at a Women's Leadership Symposium. The Women's Economic Forum conferred her with the Iconic Woman Award this year, which is a great achievement. She's currently on the advisory board of Femme First Foundation, a women advocacy group working to bring more women participation in leadership roles, and also Kautilya School of Public Policy based in Hyderabad. And this school endeavors to provide the best training and mentoring for those who wish to pursue public policy in the nation or overseas. I can go on and on, but I will hand over to Ms. Priyanka Chaturvedi, and thank you very much, ma'am, for joining us in this session. Thank you. Over to you.
Thank you so much, Ranjana ji. Thank you, Sampada. Thank you, Asha ji. And thanks to Preeti ji also. I was listening to her initial comments, and Vaishali ji. It is an honor and privilege for me to be speaking here. I'm hoping I'm part of a panel. Is there anyone else, or am I the only one who will be speaking?
You're the only one. You're the
Oh,
so please go
okay.
ahead.
Okay, so again, very rarely do I get a chance to speak all by myself without having a panelist to share my experiences with or to hear the other side. So thank you so much. So I'll have the entire stage to myself. Firstly, I think I would want to also thank CII Western Region and the IWN team for coming up with something like this. I believe this is your flagship event, which you'll do annually, and you'll also have, I saw the creative, I also believe you'll have a male participant also who'd be joining in. So it's very interesting to watch how women are now coming forward and finding their space under the same sun, which has been denied to us for so long. We continue to be less in numbers in terms of whether we look at corporate board spaces, we look at corporate promotions, senior leadership roles in organizations, political spaces, and various other spaces. If we see how women are represented, their representation is far below the population that we are. COVID has also skewed it further. All reports tell us and suggest that moving forward, whether we look at climate change as being a big challenge, COVID being a big challenge, the worst sufferers would be the women, not just in India, but across the world. And we all need to work because we are vocal in our spaces. It becomes important that we make our voices heard collectively. Unfortunately, Indian women are speaking, but they're speaking in silos, which makes our voices ineffective. And it becomes extremely important that whatever networks we have, whether in political spaces, whether in corporate spaces, whether through platforms such as CII, various other organizations which have their women platforms, they need to be brought on board under the same belief and understanding that we have been deprived of equal opportunities, inclusive spaces. B, moving forward post-COVID world and a world which is rapidly changing because of climate change, women are going to be facing the brunt of it. How do we change that? How do we make it something where women are A, equal participants, B, that the brunt of it all is shared by everybody, and everybody acts more responsibly towards the changing times we are living in. I have been raising my voice consistently because I believe beyond our politics, what we need to look at this particular issue is from a gender perspective. And we as a gender need to speak up for each other, stand up for each other. We may disagree with each other. Our politics may be different from each other. Our thought processes could be very different from each other. What we cannot be thinking differently on is how women need to be empowered enough to be able to be equal participants in India's economic growth story. Every data point suggests that the more female labor participation in workforces, the better it will be for any nation, whether it is through their GDP, through changing vision, changing how we look at our horizons, how we move forward as a developed society. And Baba Sahib Ambedkar always said that if you want a developed, evolved society, you need to have women as equal participants. When we became independent, and after which our constitution came into place, while various other countries, women from various other countries, countries such as America, had to fight for their voting rights, while Indian women were considered equal citizens, they were also considered equal participants in the voting process and India's democracy. In terms of opportunities, we were treated as equal citizens. What changed for the nation was how our patriarchal society continued to look at women as someone who would be someone's wife, someone's daughter, someone's relative, and their decisions would be on the basis of a male member of the house. And that patriarchal system, unfortunately, continues to, uh, I would say, beset us in various other roles that we play. We have been molded into believing that a woman who is working is someone, and if she's successful, she may have compromised in some particular way, or she should not be so ambitious enough to make choices of her own. These kind of mindsets, this kind of judgment that happens, we really need to move beyond that, and every one of us should call out such kind of judgmental behavior, such kind of biased mindset, such kind of mindset which continues to promote patriarchy, is something we need to work on. When I said I was happy to see even a male member participate in Women Nation, I believe any society to progress cannot progress in silos. Men also need to be participants in ensuring that women continue to get the spaces that they duly deserve. Women continue to get support from various sections of society which have till now denied them that equal opportunity. I have always been a believer of inclusive society. Now, moving forward, post-COVID world, post what we see, the challenges that we saw during COVID also were when we saw the lockdown happen. There was lockdown led to women working out of homes. So if they were working women, there was added responsibility of handling the household chores, handling children's education, handling their own workspaces. And because they did not have house helps, they had to be handling all the domestic responsibilities as well. It took a mental toll on many women. Uh, Unfortunately, in India, while we talk about physical well-being, not many people speak about mental well-being. Women traditionally have been prone to not share their problems, not share their issues in a family setting, because they believe that they need to be fit and fine, they need to be absolutely all right, and they need to project a picture of perfection to the world, that they are going to pull it together, and she is the one who's in charge of it. So many times, what she feels mentally is she's unable to express it, which leads to mental health issues. If we look at the NCRB data, the second highest suicide post farmers, unfortunately, is that of housewives, which often does not get reflected on. So mental health was a big challenge. Physical health, physical well-being also had a massive impact. And when we look at the COVID vaccination gender gap that exists, will also show to you how women are not prioritizing their own safety and security measures. Now, in terms of physical violence, that we saw a rise of physical violence, not just in India, it happened globally because women were housebound, homebound. There were various other places where they could not report their problems to. We saw an increase in domestic violence. So that is another challenge that women have have faced. Many women are at the brunt of losing their jobs. More women have lost jobs during the pandemic than men have. Statistics show that. So why is it that it becomes easiest? Women are the easiest scapegoat for any society to continue to be denied equal opportunity. So COVID has shown these discrepancies and these disparities that exist. And it becomes extremely important that we raise these issues at various forums, on various formats, and try to address these challenges. While we rise again, absolutely we will rise again because of the sheer willpower of having to prove ourselves repeatedly at every given forum, at every given fora, and also because that is the need of the hour. However, an ecosystem that needs to be created which treats women of the society at par with men, and providing them systems and a law and order structure, a structure which makes them feel safe, makes them feel empowered enough to be able to go out there and conquer the world. So we have been rising again and again and again on the base of our abilities and our abilities to face those challenges. We are yet to see an ecosystem which promotes. So in terms of, like I said, constitution may give us the right, but however the society has created barricades for us, has created barriers for us. So we would need to address those through our policies. We will have to address those through being a collective voice, a voice which is heard, having positions at leadership tables, whether in policy, whether in politics, or whether it is in business spaces. It is something that we really need to work on. Our policies need to reflect on encouraging more women to come forward in workspaces, become entrepreneurs, if they are entrepreneurs, becoming job creators. And one very interesting fact, I hope I'm not taking too much time because one very interesting fact that I have come across during my discussion with empowering women financially, especially women who have small businesses. I have been told that women who take loans are very rarely NPA in terms of returning back those loans. About 95% of women who have taken loans end up paying them back very diligently. So any country, any bank, any financial system should be encouraging and making it more inclusive for women, and making it more simple for women to be able to become entrepreneurs as well as employment creators. Because in terms of their sense of responsibility towards having taken a loan and having paid it back, and towards their contribution to the economy, they have been far more responsible than many people that we keep hearing about. So I would always be on the side of empowering women, not just through employment creation or bringing them in employment spaces, but also making them businesswomen, entrepreneurs, and creating such networks such as yours, which help empower them. Post COVID, I would say, besides the domestic violence, I would also say that it has become difficult for women also to be able to re-establish their businesses. Those who were looking at expanding further also see themselves having to struggle with those spaces. So I would say any policy which works towards that would work towards more empowerment of women. The second most important problem that women, because of a changed scenario, because many of us are going online, are also facing all kinds of sexual harassment or over virtual spaces, whether it is through social media platforms or virtual spaces, which till now uh, was something which were not very frequently used, but are being forced to use, but turns out to become another tool for creating harassment for women. We're seeing that happen on various platforms, and unfortunately, our laws are not adhering to or unable to hold such people accountable. So I think it becomes important that we look at a structure, whether we look at it financially, through law and order, through policy making, which is more wholesome for women to be able to feel empowered enough in a society. I repeatedly say this, and I will continue to say this, that political parties play a very important role. When women see more women in leadership roles, they feel more empowered. It is not a feeling of inadequacy. It's a feeling of shared stories, shared challenges, shared experiences, and they feel empowered just by seeing another woman out there. I was reading this very interesting book called Lean In by Sheryl Sandberg, where she said, why do women look at role models? Why do women need role models? Why do women need mentors? Because it is something that women hold themselves back in the belief that they need some mentor. I came into political space without a mentor, without any family background in something like this. It was just sheer determination to be able to break these so-called barriers that existed. That can a woman manage to make space for herself without coming from a political background, without having tons of money to splurge and get the ticket she wants or contest from a seat she wants? Can a woman, through her sheer hard work and belief that she can change the system by her own personal choice as well as determination, do that? So even a story like that is very encouraging and very empowering in a way for many other women who may be looking at political spaces as a choice to have their voices heard. So while I do agree that we do not need mentors in our lives, but we do need role models who have the shared experiences to be able to look at them and say that, yes, there is a way forward. And if so and so person can do it, so can we. So I think it becomes very important to create such structures. Even office spaces need to understand women are now ambitious enough to look at senior leadership roles. They cannot be subjected to or reduced to just mid-level roles, which they continue to be subjected to. Very few women, even in corporate spaces, reach the top level, and they are a handful, I'll be very honest. So I think it is a culture that we set in, a creation of who we are, creating an ecosystem that takes us where we want to be, and that is the only way forward. So despite our challenges, despite our barriers, we have risen time and time again. We can only rise to the pinnacle when we create ecosystems, not just of support, not just of networks, but of policies and our politics. That's extremely important. And I'm hoping that many that I speak to today through your platform or who are listening to me today would be able to also voice similar thought processes which relate to our gender, not maybe our politics, but relate to our gender. And always remember that we may come from any political parties with any kind of political thought processes or ideology, but we need to keep above everything, above it all, is our gender justice. That I think should be the priority. So thank you so much for having me on your platform. And if there is some questions that someone of you would have, I'd be happy to answer those.
Thanks, Priyanka ji. It was very insightful and extremely inspiring what you talked about. I mean, I think all of us here can relate to you, and you were extremely motivating to say the least. And what you talked about, that the post-COVID scenario, what you talked about being judgmental, gender bias, and cutting across, the gender, it doesn't matter which political party you belong to. All those points made made a lot of sense to all of us. Especially, we should be proud that in India, that we all the women were allowed to vote when all the other countries had to fight for their voting rights. So we have been at the forefront of so many things in India, and what you talked about very well, whether it's and physical and mental well-being. I think the women talk a lot about physical well-being, going to the gym and being physically fit, but no one wants to talk about mental well-being, and we try to put it under the carpet. I can go on and on, but I think you've covered it all. And I think this capsule, what you have said, I think we should really share it with everyone, every corporate, every organization, what you've talked about, and that will make a difference, surely, Priyanka ji. And thank you very, very much for coming here and giving your keynote address. Really
Thank you so
appreciate
much.
it.
Thank you so much for
Thank
having
you.
me on. Thanks.
You're welcome. Thank you, Priyanka ji. I have great pleasure in introducing our next speaker, Ms. Dhriti Banerjee. Ms. Dhriti Banerjee joined as the Director, Zoological Survey of India on the 6th of August, 2021. She's the first woman to grace the chair in the 105-year history of the Zoological Survey of India, a premier research institution on faunal biodiversity and conservation under the aegis of the Ministry of Environment, Forests and Climate Change. A Presidency College graduate, I think all of you know Presidency College is one of the most coveted colleges in India. She began her research career on the physiological effects of sustained use of abusive drugs in human and animals and was awarded several fellowships and grants for research projects. On completion of a PhD, she joined the Zoological Survey of India in 1998 as a junior research scientist. Known as the Lady of the Flies, she is now into the science of criminal forensics and is trying to find suitable models of fly species which can be used for crime detection in Indian environmental conditions to aid law enforcing agencies. Extremely interesting. Dr. Dhriti Banerjee is also the lady behind the Digital ZSI, an extremely ambitious program with futuristic goals of integrating artificial intelligence into biodiversity research. This web-based information would enable all researchers, wildlife enthusiasts, and students, and anyone interested in biodiversity to access the specimens in the National Zoological Collection and the fauna of India by the click of a mouse. She's authored several books, research articles in peer-reviewed journals, and quite a few popular articles in vernaculars. She's conducted several awareness programs for students of biodiversity studies and has delivered several talks on popular scientific topics aired by Akashvani and the Doordarshan. She's a member of more than 15 learned societies, both international and national, and has worked closely with the Ramakrishna Mission and the Rotary Foundation and was a member of an all-women Rotary Club. Dr. Banerjee was recently conferred with the award of the Exceptional Woman of Excellence by the Women's Economic Forum at The Hague, Netherlands on the International Women's Day 2018. I graciously invite Dr. Banerjee for her special address. Over to you, Dr. Banerjee. Thank you. You're on mute.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, you have to start again. Sorry for that.
Okay. Okay. Thank you so much. Thank you, Ratna, for that introduction and all your kind words. Thank you, Preeti, Chairperson CII, Indian Women Network. Thank you for inviting me in the 6th WomeNation Summit, #Rising Again. Not very often that I find myself in the midst of so many achievers, personalities of great strength and repute. Honestly, I'm feeling extremely honored at being a part of exceptional group. In fact, as I speak, I realize that the fact is not being in the midst of women achievers too often is not so much about our ability to achieve great heights, but about how the system and the social conditioning stops women from achieving their full potential. You and I, if we are seen as achievers, have nobody else to thank but ourselves. I was born in 1971. It was a very pleasant February night, but my mother succumbed to postpartum hemorrhage and almost died. 51 years later, when the news splashed all over the national dailies that I was the first woman to be appointed as Director ZSI in its history of 100 years of Zoological Survey of India, my mother's first reaction was, thank God, Jhuma. Jhuma is my pet name, by the way. And you know, all Bengalis have weird pet names. So it was like an exclamation. She said, thank God, Jhuma, I didn't die at childbirth and I lived to see this day. This possibly crowns my entire journey in the 75th year of independence. Thank God that it happened this year, that we did not have to wait for the Indian independence to reach its centenary till they decided to appoint a woman as Chief of Zoological Survey of India. And thank God, I've lived to see this day. If I may say so in the same vein as that, we have to live to see the day happening to each and every one of us. With that confidence that on and on it'll happen to all of us one day. This is the 75th year of independence. And it's about 72 years ago, our constitution guaranteed us the right to be treated as equals without any reference to our genders. Our achievements overall have been very great in these 75 years of independence. We have been included in every sphere, may it be business, education, social development, scientific research, to name a few. When we compare ourselves and our achievements with any nation who have achieved independence around the same time in Asia and Africa, we find ourselves ways ahead of every other nation, and we can justifiably take pride in that. The dream of our founding fathers and all freedom fighters of a great nation has been achieved in a good measure, and the 75th year of Indian independence have been a good time to celebrate and acknowledge our achievements. But there are areas where we should have done a lot better. Women empowerment is one such. What we need to reflect, and we need to reflect on that. The Indian ethos and culture is more than 5,000 years old. And if you may go back and research the lives in the early Vedic period, you'll find that women were heads of villages. They governed their communities through a panchayat sort of a society system, which has a basic structure, which is very similar to our present administration. Women conducted religious, social, administrative activities, as well as managed their homes too. Women empowerment is not a Western concept, but a very Indian one. It was only in the later Vedic period where it got diluted. If you look at the game of chess, it was invented in India thousands of years ago. And what is the name given to the most powerful piece? It's a queen. This certainly would have not been an accident, and that's how the power structure was possibly defined. That power structure endures on the chessboard. So when we talk about women empowerment, it's not as if we are talking about something new. It's just that we're reclaiming what originally belonged to women. Now I'm from Bengal. You know, two of our reigning deities are worshipped here for ages. It's Ma Durga and Ma Kali. I grew up believing that I am capable of fighting all odds, because whenever I could see that huge idol of Ma Durga in the pandal, I thought that if she could fight, why can't I? If she could win over the demons, I too could fight my own kind of demons, both within and outside of me. Women empowerment as a phrase tends to suggest that it was as if someone is going to give us the power to decide upon our fate. And that someone is more often seen as a man. It must be made very clear here that nobody gives up power and control, whether it be to a woman or it be to a man. If women have to be treated at par, they have to empower themselves. They should not be looking at a man to empower them. That empowering forces need to start with your mother, with your sister, with your daughter, being a mother-in-law, sister-in-law, any form, any good form. Personally, I've been very blessed on all counts. That has helped immensely in reaching where I've reached today. You know, it's quite acceptable for anyone who has achieved some amount of success in a chosen field to get very emotional when you talk about it and all the challenges that I've gone through. So all the difficulties that I had to overcome. And so when I look at my own journey, I too find those challenges from the past staring at me. And at times it makes me misty-eyed. I mean, that's human and that's very normal too. But I'm equally mindful of my blessings, and I don't forget to count them every day. The support that I got, and perhaps the biggest blessing that I have is my doggedness, my desire to make my effort count, my willingness to rough it out for whatever I aim to achieve. When I look back, even before my journey in ZSI as a research scholar in Presidency College, I remember times when I would find myself staring at dead ends where the way forward would have appeared to be non-existent. I remember one of my scientific articles was returned and rejected so many times that I named it King Bruce. But every time it came back, I would rewrite the article and add some more data and some more analytics into it. Finally, on the 13th occasion, it was accepted in a journal with a very high impact factor, which at that point of time was unthought for. And I guess my doggedness had paid off. Those were times when I would have my family, my parents stand by me very solidly. I remember one particular instance when my fellowship got stuck and I was late in receiving funds from Delhi. My dad repeatedly wanted to help me out, but I was fiercely independent. I refused to take his help and instead started giving tuition to undergraduate students to have something to go on. That stress on me was a big pointer in setting my future. I would push myself to the maximum before I bent and asked for help. I was too self-effaced to ask for help and tried and tried till I reached a breaking point before I would snap back. And I found it always had worked for me. And I remember that when I joined Zoological Survey of India in 1998, I was not even assigned a department or a scientific division for about a month. Actually, I also didn't have a table to sit for a month. Every day I would be shifting tables accordingly to the person non-available. For 2 months, I settled around and finally got into a section by accident. It was a comparatively lesser staffed department, and this girl, quote unquote, had to be fitted in. In fact, they would have preferred a boy in that place, but because there was no boy, so they thought, okay, a girl would do. I got my own table only after 6 months and a chair to sit on for another 4 weeks. There would have been so many times I would have felt very irrelevant, absolutely invisible, and then I had to make my work count. We had a project on Arunachal Pradesh. The team did not want to take me since they thought a woman would be a liability in very difficult terrain. And it was an all-men team. There would be field camps where all of us, irrespective of all gender, would be ramped into one room with only one toilet to share. I was quite adamant and it never cribbed because the moment you do that, you were out of the team. That was my first project. I wanted the team and my scientists to appreciate me. And so it happened. For the first time, I felt wanted and important, and that had changed everything. And that, in fact, designed my. I had also added it on the time when I joined the Zoological Survey, just around 98. And as I said, I'm blessed. My husband, and not only my husband, mother-in-law, my mother-in-law were very supportive, and as supportive as my own parents. So working late or trying with all my team was looked upon with a lot of curiosity, but never critically. In fact, my father-in-law, who was a wanderlust, and he was extremely excited seeing me prepare my survey tour with a backpack and a camera, and to see me off the Aurora station, thinking that his daughter-in-law is going to do something as a national. He called his famous all boys members to meet me, leaving absolutely nonplussed because I couldn't understand what was the fuss about. However, the challenge became a lot bigger when mother came in. Striking a balance was increasingly difficult. I had to take leave and be working on my projects from home. Possibly that was a first brush with work from home way back in 2003. Both my family and my immediate bosses were however, very supportive. Interestingly, the then director of ZSI had always approved of my leave application without much quibble. My daughter, by the time she had turned 10, turned out to be my biggest cheerleader and till date is still my biggest motivator. The Zoological Survey of India is a very set and predefined norms for promotion. Till about 2010, my progress was steady while we were preparing for a centenary, which had to happen in 2015. So we had completed 100 years. We had initiated an interaction with our former directors and scientists. It was on one such session that one of our former directors said, Dhriti, you have to become the first lady director of ZSI. The thought starts. Fortunately, I had a boss who was my immediate director who believed in developing and grooming his second line. And I thought I could stick my neck out and seek more responsibilities, even if it would be working very hard. I was delighted and given the role of head of office because it would be my first on experience with the ZSI administration. I worked in charge of finance division, but this was a whole new experience. I was very fearless, and me being fearless helped me in making decisions quick and vicious and extremely effective at times. But it was not until 2015 that I really thought seriously about directorship. We were celebrating 100 years of Zoological Survey of India, and I was charged with the publication of a centenary signature publication, where we researched on the women scientists of ZSI over a period of hundreds from 1916 to 2015. We named the book The Glorious 100. I was amazed at their contributions, but the biggest surprise was the fact that they remained unsung heroes. That was the time I decided to take up professional coaching, and I interacted with a leadership coach. This time between 2015 and 2021, I spent primarily on building myself up, both as a scientist and as a leader. I think the reason I'm here today is the fact that I believed that I deserve to be here and that I have the ability to satisfy. This self-belief and confidence in myself had to be very genuine. A hollow self-belief could not have helped me get here. I think that that is one key element common to all women leaders, whether it's Mother Teresa, whether Indira Gandhi, whether it's Indra Nooyi, Christian Lagarde, Jacinda Ardern, Angela Merkel, as any other thing you can even think or name. All of them have that one common ingredient, self-belief. They believed in themselves, and it's their self-belief was never hollow. A social reconditioning women's mind and thinking is absolutely necessary to take up greater responsibilities and assume leadership position. The idea that she's dependent on men has led to the glass ceiling and focusing on her own mental barriers. Women need to look at themselves as capable and confident without considering man as a standard or a benchmark. I'm a woman who wears a sari. I'm a caring wife, a doting and obsessive mother, the only child of my parents, my only daughter, and the only daughter-in-law of my in-laws. As much as my child is my responsibility, so my parents, my in-laws, all the traditional rituals of my 300-year-old family. Interestingly, I'm the first woman family in 350 years to conduct the Durga Puja single-handedly during the COVID pandemic without any immediate family support because of restriction on travel. I executed the job of Durga Puja just as quickly as I did my century celebrations and I ran my administration in ZSM. I sincerely believe that I do not have to compromise on any rules to make impact in my professional or my personal roles. Women are and can be successful without changing anything about themselves and without making any compromise. Loads of confidence, a good measure of intent, a lot of empathy, and absolute fearlessness. That is the batter you needed to prepare the perfect you. You are your best example to put forward, and you are your worst critic. I'm sure a lot of women feel like that, and I'm certain that a lot more would rise up to the occasion with this growing belief. Thank you so very much for your time and your attention. It has been an absolute privilege, and I take pleasure in telling you that it was fun to speak to such a wonderful audience. Thank you, Preeti. Thank you, Sampada, Ranjana, Vaishali, and all of you who are there. Thank you and have a great evening.
Thank you, Dr.
Ranjana, can
Banerjee.
we
We
ask
would-
her some questions?
Yeah, we would like to
Ranjana?
ask you some questions. And it was a
Sure.
really, really enthralling talk. And we were ourselves so excited when you became. And if I may say so, that being a fellow Bengali, I was very, very happy when you got this
Thank you.
position.
Thank you.
And when you said Chumba, yes, you caught a thing with us because we all Bengalis have a pet name. And I think what also spoke a lot about, the Queen, what you said about the game of chess, that I'd really not thought about. So, it makes a very telling point, which we can discuss later on, and
Yes,
about women
yes.
empowerment and everything that you have done. Hearty congratulations once again. And
Thank
we'll open
you,
it out
thank
for
you.
questions, Dr. Banerjee.
Sure, sure. Thank you.
Ranjana, I have a question. Can I start?
Yeah, sure, please.
Okay, it actually is from the Queen. It's something that came from the fact that you mentioned the Queen in chess. Many people, many women say that, Triti, that women don't help other women in their professions. Meaning, it's what they call the queen bee syndrome. That I've got there. I don't want to help other women if I really. Have you faced that, or what do you think about this? Do you think it's a myth, or does it really exist?
Uh, in my setup where I worked, because I would say predominant, still now the representation of women in my setup is only 20%. So here women have been looked upon in an absolutely different way. They were never even considered as competitors. So women were not competitors of men, let alone of being with other women. So I would say that in my setup, I would have loved to have women pulling each other back or backbiting, because that would have given a sense of feeling that, okay, they're fighting for something. They're not giving up. The general
That's interesting.
tendency is that you tend to give up and you say, oh, he is better than me. He works better than me. He can go on the field because I have a family to take care of. So most of the time, what happens with women, they give up a lot more easily than they should. If they push themselves a little bit more, whatever be the situation, that they it would have given them a lot more spring in the effort, which I have thought so. So with Preeti, I would say in my setup, I have never faced it, but I know in other setups, people do face it, where I would say the number of women are a lot more, or they kind of outnumber the men, or even sometimes women kind of make a what would I say, a collusion with the men and try to pull down other women. But that also, they finally, in those one or two cases I've seen the women actually outsmart the man also in the whole process. So that always made me happy that ultimately it was somebody on
That's a
top.
really interesting perspective, Jyoti, really interesting perspective. And I think there's no other.
Sorry?
I
There are
think
some more
there's some more questions. I don't
Sure.
know whether we are getting it live or not. Let me see. One question is there for you,
While
Dr.
you wait for it,
Banerjee.
can I just quickly butt
Yeah,
in?
yeah, go ahead. Asha,
Sure,
please,
sure.
please.
Yeah, I quite enjoyed the conversation, and I also kind of resonate with the Calcutta analogy, and the fact that we've got these Durga pandals and things like that. But what actually caught my attention is the quality that you mentioned of being dogged and doggedness, and that's quite inspiring, because I haven't really heard a lot of people talk about doggedness, and I'm just wondering. Has that sort of led to perceptions of being aggressive? Because we always hear about women in the double bind, and when they're seen as aggressive, they're not seen as likable. When they're seen as likable, they're not seen as aggressive. So do you have any perspective around that?
See, this is something very interesting where I would like to say is that I am very dogged, and at times I have been branded aggressive also. But at the same time, I have a lot of empathy in me. So people would be coming in with all sorts of problems. It may be a personal one, it may be something medical of which I have no clue about. I mean, I'm a scientist, but they would come up with an X-ray plate and say that, madam, can you say what is going to happen? Like these kind of things, because I listen to a lot of people. So whenever I may be very focused or maybe dogged, or I would say, like, I never say die attitude. And that especially comes in when I'm pushed to a corner. If I have the freedom to work and maneuver myself very smoothly, I don't see that trait in me at all. But whenever I've seen that I've been pushed to a corner and they have been kind of conspiring against me, that kind of conspiracy theory excites me a lot, because I have read a lot of thrillers and crime series. So that kind of thing, when I think, oh my god, they're conspiring against me, that is the time I would say I retaliate, I become aggressive, and then I've developed that never say die attitude. I mean, there are two things I believe in. One is never say die. Number two is tomorrow is another day. I always believe that whatever happens, tomorrow can't be worse than what it is today. And the same thing is also the flip side of it, is that if I'm very happy, I also think tomorrow I'll be sad. That is also there. So something may happen tomorrow. That kind of fear or morbidity is also in me. But these are two things, as you said. Yes, I'm dogged. I may be branded aggressive, but they've never dared to come and tell me on face that you're aggressive. And they don't even dare to say it behind my back, I'm certain that I'm aggressive. So that means I must be way more aggressive than even beyond imagination, that they don't even dare to discuss it behind my back. Otherwise, they would have discussed it and I would have come to know. So, but I think a lot of empathy helps even if you're aggressive, because I have a lot of empathy. I kind of discuss, I think, I bring people into, and I work as a team. So whenever I'm doing any research, I always work as a team and I take care of all my team members, paying attention to the small things, giving them importance. So even if kind of I am internally, that aggressive thing is there, it doesn't show on my face. I mean, and I try to keep my cool as far as possible. So I guess that kind of thing works. So,
Thanks.
Great.
That was amazing. Do you have time for two more questions? People are very
Sure,
keen
sure.
to.
Go ahead. Go
Yeah.
ahead. Go ahead. Go ahead.
So one of the questions is, what would be a piece of advice to the millennial generation who expect a bouquet welcome versus your journey when you did not have even a table to sit on?
Yeah, see, that is something which, I tell my daughter also that nothing will come to you served on a plate. You have to work for it. So what is happening is that even like whenever, like if she even wants a phone, I would buy her the best one in the which is available now, just to see that smile and the happiness in her face. But at the same time, I do realize that I am doing a mistake. It's wrong on my part. That is not being a parent. That is not being good motherhood. Also, I realize all of it, but somewhere my emotions kind of overcome is overshadowed, and I feel that okay, that smile and that happiness and the glee, and she'll come and give me a hug. That kind of pays for it. But we are creating this kind of a setup where people are expecting, especially the millennial generation, they're expecting that life to be served on a plate. So I guess there is no harm in expecting at the beginning because it's a very long journey. So on your journey, you gradually get to know what is I mean, how to call a spade a spade. And when you encounter all those when you're roughed up a bit, then only you get to know that, okay, you'll not get a bouquet. The bouquet may be having thorns. The thorns may prick you. You may be having septicemia. You may end up with a doctor. So that is a kind of realization life will gradually make you feel through. So that would be a long experience. But but again, that expectation that everything would be positive is also a positive expectation. So otherwise, the world would be a very glum place to live in. I mean, if I always thought, okay, I couldn't have been, in this kind of a setup, I could have never aspired to become a director. But that I aspired, in spite of everything, in spite of everybody around me, I inspired for it and then I worked for it. Until and unless you have that positive thing, that will not happen. But I guess this whole thing for the millennial generation is a learning process. You get to learn it either way. So you will be adapting and adjusting. That's a Darwinian concept of evolution. It's been there for such a long time, and you will survive basically according to those laws only. You'll evolve socially, psychologically, in every other possible way, and then you grow up to be a good person. End of the day, you have to be a good person. And you should be
Very
standing in
true.
front of the mirror and not cribbing at it and saying, oh my God, why did I do this? This kind of thing should never happen. You should stand in front of the mirror and have a smile in your face, like, okay, I've done a good job. So today is another day and I'll be doing some more good deeds today. So that should be the way you look at it. And I guess they will learn it that way.
Thanks, Dr. Banerjee. I think your positivism comes out very strongly, so that is
Yes.
something, that circumpasses everything. So that is so effusive that we can feel it even on the virtual platform. I have one more question
Okay,
for
thank
you. You're
Yeah.
most welcome. What was one derailer in your career and how did you overcome it? I'm sure you had a couple, but if there's something that you could think of that, sort of was a derailer in your career and, you overcame that. I think you did speak a little bit about it, but if you can speak about one, it would really help everyone. Thank you.
Okay, my daughter was 1.5 years old. I had got a lateral selection to a senior scientist post. And when I got a lateral selection that particular year, 2007, my mother-in-law passed away. So my father-in-law was left alone in the house. My daughter was 1.5 years old, and my husband had migrated to London. And because it was it was a selection process, I was transferred to Shillong. And then initially I was kind of, totally distraught. And I thought, okay, should I give up my job? Should I because there was nobody to take care of my in-laws as well as my daughter. My mother was not confident enough because she was only 1.5 years. So she said, Charita Cherade, you leave the job. It can't be that big. Bringing up your daughter is more important, and your father-in-law is also alone. How can you just go to Shillong like this? So then I had only two options. either I resign, or I get, work in my older previous post only. That is a junior scientist. And the third one is that I fight. And then I decided, okay, come what may, they can't eat me, they can't kill me, so I should rather fight. And then I went to court. And I fought 2.5 years. It was a very long battle. And then I finally won the case. And then I was reinstated. I lost 3 years of my career. 2 years of my career and my seniority, but I was allowed to join in Calcutta, and then I was given charge of the Zoological Survey of India to head the finance area, because that was given as a punishment. Because we are scientists, we always crib about administration. So the administration was given to me as a punishment because I had gone to court and I fought. But that I decided to make use of it, because that was an area which I had no clue, and I decided to learn. And in that whole process, I made a whole lot of friends. People were extremely friendly with me because I was very liberal in a lot of ways and I helped people around. And that was a turning point in my career where I got to understand. I moved out of the laboratory and I could interact with real people in the setup. I would see how things work. What happens when we have a budget which is not suiting our kind of a research activity? How to go ahead to the ministry and ask for more money? How to go ahead and ask the minister that we need money? And in the whole process, I had gotten a 25 crore special grant over a period of 2 years. So that was something which I realized that and I also have a belief that something is basically the things are set in some way or the other, and you have to find your way or to go to reach it. So if there's no point in sitting back and crying about what could have happened or what you can't do. You should always fight it out. I always did that. I always fought it out. I thought that, and if you work hard, number one, as I said, you have to work extremely hard. Then you have to fight it out. You have to be very honest, and you have to have a lot of empathy, and you have to have, quite a good dose of common sense. That common sense works a lot and it helps you to push through. And that, I would say, would be a long way in pushing through. And that was one of my areas, which I guess, in fact, my former director, against whom I went to court when I became director ZSI, he called me up and said, it all started when I transferred you to Shillong. So you should be grateful to me. So I guess, yes, sir, it was a big learning process. I am grateful to you. And I hope it will be helping me in my next years to come to work forward for the betterment of the organization. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Banerjee. I think that was very insightful what you said, and the way you said it in the story form was extremely, engrossing. And I'm so glad apni chakri ta chhade nahi. That has made a lot of difference. So we are very glad to see you here, and it was amazing what you shared with us. And we hope you'll come on our other sessions as well. And
Sure. I will
thank
do
you
that.
so
I'll do
much,
that.
and wishing you all the very, very best from CII.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so
And
much.
thank you once again for inviting me. Thank you so much.
Shubho Pujo. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'll hand over to Sheetal. Sheetal, can you please take over the next session, please? Sheetal, you're on mute.
Yes. Hi, everybody. Good evening. It's been a wonderful evening listening to so many of them, such amazing talks, such interesting communications. The evening is really brightening up. We move ahead for our first panel discussion. And before I start that, could I just request all the panelists to turn on their videos? I think I can see Shalini is here, Anna is here. Yeah. We start our next session on Craftsomia, which is women in workforce. Before we start with, I hand over this to Sarah, who will be moderating the session. Let me just briefly talk about IWN and the summit for a minute. WomeNation Summit is a flagship event of CII Western Region IWN. In 2013, Confederation of Indian Industries launched the Indian Women Network, IWN, with the vision of being the largest network for career women. The thought behind the formation of IWN was that the career women required a structured network to meet like-minded women to discuss and overcome challenges that they are or might be facing at their workplace. The IWN works towards enabling women to become better professionals and achievers in their respective fields through initiatives and activities to facilitate a supportive platform, a platform to learn and exchange ideas, an avenue to network and grow, supplemented by exposing women to new opportunities presented by the ecosystem with the objective of inclusion and growth of women in the workforce. The IWN, that is the Indian Women Network, is one kind of women forum giving the stage directly to women. Like the phrase goes on, it is a network of women, for women, and by women. A platform for women to discuss issues, opportunities at workplace, and learn from each other's experiences. And today, this WomeNation Summit is one such platform with one such initiative which brings women from different backgrounds together to share and exchange their knowledge and to learn from each other and support them. This was about CII-IWN. I would like to introduce Sarah Larson. Sarah would be moderating the next session. Sarah is the head of Swedish Chamber of Commerce India since 2014 and has held several managerial posts with Ericsson in both Sweden and India over the last several years. The Chamber is a hub for the Swedish business community in India. About 200 Swedish companies are currently established here, doing business in many different areas and all over the country. Swedish values of sustainability, innovation, creativity, and equal society are embedded in these companies, approach and commitment to India, and also guiding principles to the chamber. I invite Sarah. And over to you, Sarah. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I hope you can hear me, and I hope my internet holds for doing this session for these few very precious minutes that we have together. First, a great big thank you to the CII Women's Network. It's really good to be. It's really good to be here, and thank you for inviting us. And it's exciting to know that there are so many women and others listening in from across the country. And I do wish we could see you all. I realize that's not possible, but I hope you can hear us well. Yes, as Shita was saying, I'm part of, my name is Sarah, I'm working with the Swedish Chamber of Commerce, India. And one of our key programs is to work with gender equality and gender equity.
Sorry about that. I think Sarah
I lost the pictures.
Sarah, you might want to switch off your video if you're having a bandwidth issue.
Sarah?
I have a bandwidth issue.
Yes.
Can you hear me?
Switch off your video, and so we would be able to hear you clearly.
Okay, I'm turning off my video.
Yeah,
You
we
have
can hear you.
seen me and you've seen my very colorful background, so I think you have that on your memory now. So let's go on. I hope you can hear me better now. Yeah. So as I said, for us in the Swedish Chamber of Commerce India and our network of about 220 Swedish companies in India, gender equality and equity are important questions, very important questions. And this is something we work with on a strategic level. And we know that, and it's great to be here in your forum, which is called Rising Again, which I really like that name. And it's amazing to have seen the agenda with all the women that are going to talk about what it means to make a difference and have made a difference as well in their workplace and in their lives. And it's, I would say, the gender equality and gender balance and equity in companies, in our workforce, have become even more important in the wake of the COVID-19 pandemic. Women continue to further fall behind in participation in the formal. And the pandemic has kind of unfortunately made that we know that women have more difficulties to join back into the workforce because of mobility or increased family care and so forth. And I think we all need to do a very concerted action together to keep increasing number of women in the workforce, so we get workforces or organizations that are equal, not only in distribution, but also in the take into context both men and women characteristics, and therefore can build an organization that is inclusive of everyone. So in a few years back, the Chamber started a program called Kraftsamla. Kraftsamla in Swedish, it's a Swedish word, means join our forces together, come together. And that's what Kraftsamla is all about, making sure that we collaborate and that we co-create in what we do and learn from one another, because our companies are from many different sectors and business areas, and there are different both cultures and standards in each one of them. And together with my friends online, and I will soon stop speaking because clearly I have bandwidth issues, we are wanting to just, put forward a little bit of a conversation or talk a little bit about what we're doing within Kraftsamla in our own companies and Kraftsamla as a group. And we want to take the opportunity to share with you on how we together seek to dynamically address gender issues in society, increase empowerment for women, greater collaboration between the sexes to together build a just world, and a place where all voices are equally heard and equally received. And in Kraftsamla, we work on three pillars: continuous learning, we do studies, observation, and analysis. Right now, for example, we're doing a study on women in blue-collar roles in Swedish companies, and see how we can, the challenges and opportunities they face. We work on catalyzed change through creative dialogues, training programs. And the third thing is to bridge the gap for women to join, return, retain, be promoted, become leaders, and so forth. That's one where we practically want to be involved. So moving into our conversation, Anna, I want to start with you, and I'm going to introduce the panelists as they come in and speak. Anna Lekval, our Consul General in Mumbai. The Consulate General has been a key force in Kraftsamla. You were part of initiating this program a few years back. And you, I wanted to ask you, since you represent Sweden in this forum, gender equality is a core value embedded in the government's agenda. Can you tell us a little bit how, and the thought process behind the policy work undergoing in the Swedish government?
Thank you, Sarah. Thank you, and CII and the whole Women's Network for organizing this. Can you hear me? Just so I'm checking. I'm laudable. Yes, Shalini is saying yes. Thank you. Excellent. We all have these internet issues. Thanks, Sarah. And yes, it's really wonderful to be part of this. I was at the inauguration session of the summit 2 years ago and was very impressed with the engagement and dynamics and the whole community and supporting each other. for gender and for women and participations, particularly within in the workforce. You asked about Swedish policy. Yes, Sweden is a country where gender equality is really has actually become. It's a long journey, but it's become a very core policy issues in the Swedish government, both in domestic as well as in our foreign policy. In 2014, we were the first country in the world to have a feminist foreign policy, which basically means it's my job to talk about and work towards gender equality as a representative of Sweden, and that goes for all of our 108 missions across the board, whether you're a male ambassador or female or etc. It also means that we've put a lot of effort into actually having equal representation. Also in the foreign ministry, when I joined, you did not have that many women in leadership roles, for example. Now we are basically at a 50-50%, which is a huge step, also for a very traditional institution that I come from, foreign policy. And domestically, we haven't come all the way, of course, because it's a continuous process, and you need to keep on working on it. But there are a number of things in key focus. It's about equal pay. It's about having both a career and a family life. So you have support networks also for you when you have children, and it's also about convincing men to take part of their role in the family. So that we can have a balanced and equal equality both at home and at work, or equality at work requires equality at home. I know you want to get back to that later, Sarah. I'll throw it back to you now, or to Pete and Shalini, who is here. Thank you. Did we lose Sarah?
Thank you so much, Anna.
Yes.
Yes, I can hear you. Can you hear me? Yeah. I'm so sorry. My internet seems to be very messy, so you might have to jump in, Anna, and take over the conversation. But just before I go over to Pete and Shalini, in your opinion, what do you see being some of the challenges and opportunities for Swedish companies working abroad when it comes to gender equality, and what are some of the challenges we really need to address?
Thank you. And let me first say, in India, there are over 200 Swedish companies, and Maharashtra being the really core part of the majority are here, and also in other places. What I find really encouraging coming to India and meeting the Swedish companies here is the fact that there is such a strong cooperation, and these values really transcend also. And I hear from companies. I was last week in Pune. I met even the small company that talked about how they were also, encouraged by their sort of mother company in Sweden, who had a female CEO, of course, to also really focus on this here, and they had them take extra efforts to include more women in the workforce, but also look at the work culture and environment. I do think it's of course a contrast, and you hear very often that it's that the companies, Swedish companies, and I think Kraftsamla that we have been part of joining is such a wonderful cooperation to help each other strengthen all the different aspects that are needed, finding the right competence, retaining that competence, working on an equal work culture. I do think what I was just mentioning before, the home equality at work and the equality needed at home to ensure that's of course, I think, a challenge everywhere, but not least here. And maybe the pandemic has improved that somewhat, and that's a question back to you or to our participants. If we lose Sarah, then Shalini and Preet, why don't you jump in?
I can start,
yes,
I think.
Do jump in, Preet.
Sure. I think I'll start with the bigger picture at IKEA, and then come down to, I think one of the things that we are most known for in India is our 50-50, agenda. But before I come to the 50-50 agenda, I just want to sort of say that equality is part of our overall agenda. So it starts with with the fact that it's part of our strategy, it's part of our culture and values, and that IKEA has an equality plan with a clear purpose to becoming a world leader in equality. And along with gender, we also focus on being multicultural, creating a workspace across age and generations, very much reflecting the workplace, very much reflecting the society we live in. And I think that's a lovely way to look at it, because workplace should reflect the society that we are living in. And we are continuing to look at diverse abilities and continuing to focus on LGBT plus inclusion. And then if I come to gender, right from the start, we started to focus on gender equality in India, and we said it's almost like when we say, last year was the leap year of sustainability. If we have to get to an overall equality agenda in India, then the starting point is gender. It is still an unequal world, which is why we're all sitting here and discussing on this panel. And the commitment has been from the top to the bottom to be 50-50 across all levels of the organization. And we're very happy to share that, we are nearly there in each of our units, and the monitoring is actually done with every function, with every unit, every sub function. So, that's kind of the level of monitoring that goes on to sort of say, we have to get there. And 50-50 genuinely means 50-50. In fact, in the management team today, also proud to share that we're actually 60-40 with more women, in the management team than men. And it was not an easy journey. There were challenges, and you spoke about competence, but, we also looked at areas which are traditionally not have lesser women. And in fact, finance is one area. There are lots of CFOs now. I would say many more CFOs than used to be, at least when I started my journey in as a finance professional. But whether we looked at finance, real estate, safety and security, forklift drivers, assembling. And I know, Shalini, you're smiling because you come also from a male-dominated, industry. But how do you then build competence? Yeah, because one of the things that we don't want, anyone to feel, and I take that actually as also a personal agenda, is when people come and talk about, we have a diversity candidate and someone got hired only because of your gender. And that just is not what anybody wants to feel, whether you're a man or a woman, right? I mean, whether you're a man or a woman, you want to know that you've been hired because you have the best competence to do this job, in the best possible manner. And if as an organization we can support you in that journey of competence, we will support you. So just this feeling of equal is equal. And we worked a lot on that mindset as well, that it's not about man or woman. When we say equality, it is same. So what we've also tried to do is also keep some of our policies actually gender neutral. So or have similar policies. So parental leave, even before the government actually changed, laws, we were, I think, one of the first to launch a long parental leave for men as well, and not just for women, but of course with the precondition that you're then going to support women at work. So I think what our plan is actually to become activists in the equality space. And I won't talk so much about of course we have policies that's framework that support it as well, but how do we make an influence being who we are as a home furnishing retailer across with our own co-workers, with our customers, and in the larger society. And in March 21, you were talking, and also about the pandemic. And in fact, there's research that shows that women bore the brunt of the pandemic in more work that women did at home, rather than the other way around. And in March 21, we launched a 50-50 game on Instagram, which actually encouraged participants to join the game and come and talk about equality, come and talk about sharing responsibilities. And it was just about opening up the conversation and providing that platform to say, talk to your partners, man or woman, again, talk to your partners to say who is actually doing the work. What sharing, would you like to see as well? So, and then I think also in our marketing communications, you will not see gender stereotypes. Yeah, those are also areas where we want to influence not just what we do in our own organization, but the society at large.
Thank you, Preet. I think I'm not sure Sarah is here, so I promise to at least take it continue. And thanks so much. It is a very good, also the fact that you're mentioning how you also portray, that you're also mindful of the gender equality issues in how you're marketing and how you're portraying your products and communication. That's definitely an extra value. Shalini, I know Shalini is the head of communications at Atlas Copco. And I know you come from a background with retail and now working what we call the industrial equipment, which is hardcore, high-tech industrial products. And Atlas Copco is working very strategically to increase the number of women in the workforce. So what do you see as the initiatives to recruit, retain, promote women in the workforce of male-dominated industry? Key policies or you know, whatever you want to live. Please tell me.
Thank you. Thanks for that. And yes, I do have a background in retail. So I've worked almost half of my career for retail. And then I made the switch to manufacturing, which is Atlas Copco. And if we talk in this particular context of how, I'll clarify it by numbers a little bit. In retail, while I was still in retail, we were not having this dialogue at all because it was not seen to be a challenge. Whereas now at Atlas Copco, we are actually taking particular steps so that we can boost the number of women who work at Atlas Copco. Like most Swedish companies, Atlas Copco also very strongly believes that diversity and inclusion are key business drivers. Even more than the word strategy, I would like to use the word business driver. So we know that we have to get there. Now, if I talk of numbers a little bit, we have always, so from the time I've joined Atlas Copco, which is almost a decade ago, I have been hearing this, we have we need to increase the number of women who are part of our employees. But so the intent has always been there. What's changed now and changed very strongly is that we want to back the intent with action. What do I mean by that? So we are a manufacturing company, right? So we understand goals, we understand numbers, we understand targets. So we heard 50-50. Now you'll hear it from a manufacturing perspective. Our target is to have 30 by 30. What do I mean by that? Our aim, our goal is to have 30% of our employees as women by the year 2030. So you can see, Preet, we have quite a long way to go. But as long as we've set ourselves this target, I spoke about numbers, we are quite confident we will get there. And, I said we understand numbers, but it's not just that we understand numbers. We know that if we have to back this strong intent by an even stronger action plan, the how has to be very clearly defined. So how are we going to get there? And then we have action plans. Atlas Copco, as you know, Anna, is a very highly decentralized company. But this diversity and inclusion overrides everything. And then it's an overarching ambition across the entire company, across all geographies. We are present in close to 180 countries. So this overarching aim that we have, it is going to mean different things within our decentralized units, right? So how do we tag that? I will give you concrete examples. Within then, every business unit, we break that up into our own goals, our own ways to achieve it, because within the different businesses that we have, we are at different levels of diversity right now. But it's so one thing I spoke about is numbers. Then the other thing that we understand very, very clearly is for numbers to be achieved, you used the word mindset a while ago. It is mindsets that need to change. And so we are actually working on the cultural and mindset aspects very, very strongly. Every single business unit has set up its own, within every country, by the way, has set up its own diversity and inclusion task forces, which are going to make this happen. And I've been part of some of these dialogues that we are having within these task forces. And I must say some of the honest admissions. So we start with management teams and then we take it down to how innovation is going to be spurred even further if we have diverse workforces, right? But so while we also have the aim to be completely diverse and inclusive, we start with gender, unlike what Preet was saying, for example. So we aim to get there everywhere, but we start with gender because we have so much ground to cover there. And in these management meetings, when we're having these dialogues, okay, what's stopping you from hiring more women? At one time, we could say that probably mechanical and production engineers, we don't have that many women, but now that's not the case. More and more women are going there. And the honest admissions that are coming out from our management team members can make you go back a little bit and say, really, is that what you think? Because they're honestly admitting they thought that women cannot handle certain roles. But I'm very glad that these honest admissions are coming out, because you will not solve a problem till you admit that it's there, right? So they're at least being honest enough to admit that mindset issues are there. And then speaking of numbers again, so now those numbers find their way into people's targets, into people's key performance indicators. You have to have these many women in your team by the end of the year, for example. And then how do we achieve that? How do we create workplaces more conducive to women in a kind of manufacturing industry, which is not really traditionally seen to be very friendly to women? Those are the kind of things that I think are really making an impact, and we're starting to see results. And that was what makes me, and I'm sure everybody around the table, very happy.
Thank you very much, Shalini and Preet as well. And I think I've sorted out my bandwidth issues, but I don't dare to turn on the video, so you will have to do with my voice. But
Sure.
I think both Anna and Preet and Shalini, you may mention culture and mindset, which is basically the content of the policies. The policies are not everything. That is just setting the framework, but it's actually how they are lived out and how they are fulfilled that really make the difference. And Preet and Shalini and Anna as well, we did a training under Kraftsamla earlier this year on gender sensitization, which had 20 representatives from 11 Swedish companies in the same room, and it was really interesting. And we after that did an observation on an analysis of the different mindsets and prejudice and what was expressed in that training, and it was both men and women. And I just wanted to put some of those statements, observation up here, and maybe ask you to comment, or not in each one of them, but your thoughts on what I say. So we noticed in this group, what I spoke of, women in generally see gender discrimination and gender inequality as a systemic issue, that it's connected to society and corporate. It goes together, while men say, no, it's individual. It's not systemic. It's someone here, an individual here and there that has a prejudice about women. Second, men generally think that there are no issues with gender equality in the corporate sector, or that they know exactly what the issues are, while women feel that men do not listen to the issues of what they have to say. Third thing, women leave work because of issues with culture. Again, what we said, while policies might be in place, how you live them out and how they actually, made practical, is not fully there, and culture is still male dominated. And last one, competence and commitment are often equalized with staying late at work and traveling, and not necessarily effectiveness and productivity. And being one of the group, being one in the gang kind of thing, that's competence that seems to be promoted. So my question is, what are your thoughts? Do you see this in your companies? And what can you do about this? What are your thoughts or your reflections on these observations from this group? Who would like to start?
Yeah, can I? Okay.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
Okay, I'm going to keep it really short, Preet. So, Sarah, I completely agree, and that's exactly what I said. That people are honestly admitting that, and these are people from, these are men from the management teams, which are saying, we've always thought women cannot do a certain role. So we, the Atlas Copco is focused very heavily on providing solutions to our customers, which also involves providing great aftermarket service, for example. And in these kind of roles, the honest admissions were eye-opening. And if you say, what can we do? What we did, I think, at Atlas Copco, which was good, was we created a safe environment in which people could, men and women both, could honestly admit, okay, this is my subconscious, unconscious, unrecognized bias. I admit it, and now I'm going to work consciously to change it. So these are the two reflections that I have when I hear what you say about the findings from the gender sensitization training. Over to you, Pri.
Thank you. So firstly, I'd like to say actually at IKEA, I do not feel, and I'm not just saying it, I do not feel, I think anybody, man or woman working at IKEA would actually say that that's not what we feel in the organization. But I think that's hard. We've worked as an organization from a mindset perspective. Having said that, I'm a chartered accountant, by profession. And when I started to do my articleship and when I started to work, this was the norm. This was the norm to sort of say, the expectation was that you're going to stay late and not work late necessarily, because you can actually wrap up work and, go back home on time. But the expectation was that you will, stay late. And therefore the expectation was that there is, the link between competence and, staying up late, the link between traveling and staying up late. So I think I'd actually also like to say, and I can only comment on Indian society, that as a society, we can't run away from the fact that we are a hugely patriarchal society, and it comes through in everyday patriarchy. And it's no wonder that men don't see it, because they don't face it. I don't blame men for not seeing it, because it's not obvious to them, whereas women see it because we face it. Yeah. And the question is, how do you make a man see it as well, right? How do you make men see it as well? And one of the aspects that at least we've tried to do, and I've tried to do as well, if I get called on gender panels, I always say, where are the men? Because if they're not listening, then I'm not actually interested in talking. Because again, very much the society we live with is not only women and it's not only men. And we have to kind of come together to work. So I think I totally agree with the findings. Question is, how do you work on the mindset, not just in the organizations, but organizations are people live in families, the society has an impact. How are we challenging some of these norms in the society? And I think as women, I very, very strongly feel that we have a role to play, because if we don't talk about it, yeah, the men will not because they're not interested, right? If we look at the men in our homes, I think every successful woman will actually contribute a huge amount of their success to their father. Yeah, because, and why father, right? Even when we talk about Malala, why father? Because the father was, or technically has been, the figurehead. And I think all of us, at least I can also, relate my journey to the contribution that my father has had. And I've heard so many other stories as well. And men who come to work are fathers, as well, our brothers as well. And how do you influence that society around you, I think is also very, very important. And therefore storytelling and the impact of, just education, economic empowerment on society, on families, could also be a good way to handle that.
Anna, would you like to comment on this?
Few words. You talked about Indian society here, but I recognize the same from a Swedish society, which still is a highly equal in terms of we are a lot of women. It's sort of normal for women to work. It's very shared at this stage, etc. But these issues are still there, and not perhaps as strongly the biases that you mentioned, or the very strong difference. But it's been there, and it's been a long journey. And the biases may be still there, but there is a more consciousness today about the fact that about the patriarchal society that you both talked about, and that it's there, and even sort of and I agree, of course, Peter. It's definitely makes a big difference when men recognize this and start to become aware. Because they're also become, supportive. Because at least you win those over who want to be supportive but just don't see it, and that actually goes for a month. As you're saying, everyone will have daughters and wives and others that they want to, support. Having said that, I will also say that I do strongly believe in women's network, because I think that I have benefited, very much from having women mentors, women networks, where you can sort of relax and you can hash out all these things that you're experiencing, and which maybe not in your organization or wherever context you are, will see. But as a woman, you would see it. And that is also something that's quite clear in the training you referred to, that the women will see something because they're experiencing it. And it's an enormous support to have others who see the same thing, so you don't feel, on your own in this. And having that support will give you both confidence and courage and energy to continue to work towards a more equal society in its whole, and also to bring in sort of the men's side of this. So I think this sensitization and awareness, conscious raising is really, really important to really change the way we see things. It's very much a mindset. I know our time is running out. We would love to talk about this hours on end, but Sarah, I will leave it to you to wrap up.
To wrap up, it's 7 o'clock and we do have to close because I know you have a program coming. But apologize for the internet issues on my side, but I hope you got a little bit of a taste of the conversations that are going on in the Swedish network of companies in India. And we have started a task force with right now 29 representatives from 20 companies, Swedish companies, that are going to work or have been trained during 8 months to become ambassadors of gender sensitization, to speak culture, to talk mindsets, have creative dialogues in their own organization between the other organizations as well, both men and women on this part. So thank you so much. Thank you, Shalini. Thank you, Preet, Anna as well. And thank you, CII Women's Network, for giving us this opportunity to be part of you tonight. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. Thank you, Anna and Preet and Shalini. It was a very informative session. And we got detailed information on Craftsmala, a collaborative project on women empowerment and equality in the workforce. We move to our next session. I would request Ms. Ranjana Maitra to take over and announce the next session. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. And thanks, Sheetal. Our next session is very, very interesting. It's interaction with past IWN chairpersons, Ms. Kashmira Mewawala, Kalpana Unadkat, and Madhavi Lal, who are very dear and an integral part of CII IWN, and they've played a great role in what we are today. I would request all the panelists to turn on their videos, please. It's my great pleasure to introduce Asha Pillai, a colleague and a very dear friend, who's the moderator of this session. Asha Pillai is the Chief Finance Officer and Finance Director for Hazira Group of Companies, which comprises of Shell Energy India Private Limited and Hazira Port Private Limited. She's employed by the Royal Dutch Shell Group. She's worked in Shell since 2007 and was with downstream marketing businesses and projects and technologies prior. For Shell's India businesses, she has served as controller in projects and technologies and headed the finance function for the retail business in Bangalore. She subsequently took on a virtual global role, managing finance for digital ventures for Shell's marketing businesses with a bi-monthly stint in London. Prior to joining Shell, Asha was the branch commercial manager for Whirlpool, handling commercial operations for Whirlpool's Karnataka sales offices, having joined Whirlpool as a management graduate in Delhi. She started her career as associate with A. Ferguson Management Consultants, Mumbai. Asha is a chartered accountant and a commerce graduate from St. Teresa's College, Cochin. I would invite Asha to moderate and to start this very, very interesting session. Over to you, Asha. Thank you.
Thanks ever so much, Ranjana. And as I speak, I'm actually moving to a global role as well. So I'm in transition, taking it on formally on the 1st of October. I am really thrilled to do this. I'm actually sort of really enjoyed and feel really privileged to be part of Confederation of Indian Industries Indian Women Network. One of the best things that have happened to me, when I moved to Gujarat was the network. I do love my organization, Shell, and it's sort of extremely, high on diversity and inclusion agenda. But I've sort of learned so much in the last 1 year, and now, as part of the Western region Indian Women Network as well. And I remember the first interaction that I had with Confederation of Indian Industries was a leadership conclave in Gujarat where Kashmira and Kalpana were there, and I was, awestruck. I'm a big fan. And then, I've worked really closely with Madhavi as well in the last WomeNation Summit. So before we kick off, and this is not a plug-in for CII Indian Women Network, we will talk about it. But I think the idea is to really talk about why women's networks are important and sort of help women professionally, and it's kind of a cross industry network that Indian Women Network provides to you. So very warm welcome, and I also realized today is Kalpana's birthday, so very happy birthday, Kalpana. Thank you for spending the time with us. So I will start my introductions with Kalpana. Just give me a moment. I'm so sorry, my laptop crashed and then I had to sort of restart my Word documents. So Kalpana is a senior partner at Khetan and Company's Mumbai office. Before joining Khetan, she worked at Ashur's London office for 10 years. And since returning to Mumbai in 2008, she specializes in cross-border joint ventures, corporate laws, M&A, and corporate governance. Apart from being a lawyer, she is passionate about women's empowerment and corporate governance, which I have seen at close quarters. Kalpana is a well-recognized expert on diversity and leadership development. Her passion is to reform corporate governance principles to increase the number of women in decision-making. Kalpana is widely recognized in independent guides as one of the leading lawyers for business insights. She is also the co-author of the research Women on Board and has been frequently quoted in newspapers. She has also been awarded the Rising Women of the Year award in 2019 by Economic Times and Spencer Stuart, the Corporate Governance Lawyers of the Year, India in 2019 and 2018 by ACQ Global Awards and M&A Today, the Female Lawyer of the Year 2017 by ACQ Global Law Awards, and the Woman Super Achiever Award by World HRD Congress in 2017. Thank you so much, Kalpana, for joining.
Thank you. Thank you.
I will introduce my next guest, which is Kashmira. Kashmira, I've seen her. She's always been super active on CII, and again, somebody I didn't get the chance to meet. Yeah, I was in the audience, and Kashmira was did a fireside with, I think it was Gauri at the time, and she was witty and fun as ever. Kashmira has very rich experience of 35 years in the financial services industry as a part of the Tata Group. She was a part of the founding team of Tata Capital since 2007 and was earlier the head of wealth management. She has been a member of Tata Capital's Ethics Committee, Fraud Risk Management Committee, POSH Committees, Chief Grievance Redressal Officer. Kashmira commenced her career in 1985 with the Tata Group at Tata Share Registry Limited, and was with the company till 2007, leading teams and handling multiple roles. Head Investor Services, head of the Computer Center, part of the administrative committee that handled the overall functioning of the company, etc. At the industry level, over the years, Kashmira was involved with path-breaking changes in the financial securities market. She was a member of the Registrars Association of India, RAIN, a member of the Committee of the Depository System constituted by Security Market Regulator SEBI, a member of the Operations Advisory Committee of Central Depository Services Limited, and a member of the group constituted by the RBI to initially drive the implementation and use of the electronic clearing system for corporate benefit payouts. Kashmira has held several leadership roles in CII, Indian Women Network, as well as CII. For 2019-2020, she was the chairman of the CII, Confederation of Indian Industry, Maharashtra State Council. Currently, she is elected council member of the CII Western Region Council and a member of CII Committee on Ethics and Governance. She is on CII National Committee on Women Empowerment and Indian Women Network. Earlier, Kashmira has been a member of CII Committee on Ease of Doing Business Western Region 2019-20, chairperson of CII Indian Women Network Western Region for 2018-19 and Maharashtra for 2016-18, co-chair for CII Committee on Ethics and Governance 2018-19. Other positions, that she's held as member of the Indo-Canadian Business Chamber, National Board and State Council, chairperson of the Indo-Canadian Business Chamber, Maharashtra Region Council 2017-19, appointed to the Global Scots Network by the Scottish Government, Managing Committee member of the Tata Sports Club, and independent director. In February 2015, Kashmira received the Women's Leadership Achievement Award from the World Women Leadership Congress and Awards India. I really want to know how you manage your time. You've done so much. It's quite inspiring. And welcome, Kashmira, and thanks ever so much for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you.
And my dear friend and also mentor, Madhavi was the chairperson, when I was sort of, leading the Gujarat chapter. And we've really worked very closely. We used to meet quite often. Madhavi is a human resource professional and MBA in HR and systems from XLRI Jamshedpur. She has around 30 years of experience working for large companies like Standard Chartered Bank, Accenture, ABN AMRO, Colgate-Palmolive, and HCL and Hewlett-Packard. She has also completed a leadership management course from the University of Oxford and has been the head of HR at Deutsche Bank since May 2015. As a member of the executive committee at Deutsche Bank, she's responsible for shaping the Deutsche Bank Group's people strategy in India and in helping build the employer brand for the organization. She was conferred the Women Leadership Award by the jury and council of board members of the Institute of Public Enterprises, BFSI, in 2010, and the Distinguished Alumnus Award by XLRI in 2016. She is also a founding member of the HR Committee for FICCI. Madhavi is also a member of the CII National Committee on Leadership and HR and has been the chairperson of CII Indian Women Network for Western region. She's on the list of top 50 HR influencers in the ETHR World List for 2020. So as you can see, welcome Madhavi, and as you can see, a very distinguished panel that we have here. And thanks ever so much for doing this. We had a discussion around, what we wanted to talk about, and it was really about, sort of harnessing the power of professional networks such as CII. CII has a vision to be the largest network for career women. And I think the biggest advantage that CII Indian Women Network has is the main body CII as well. And the network that we get is not just with the women networks, but also with the Confederation of Indian Industries leadership. We have tentacles pretty much everywhere. You name the person, you name the organization, they are part of CII. So we've got a very prolific network. But having said that, what we wanted to really talk about was why the network and what the current and past initiatives and stories we have on IVIN, because, as we were discussing, it's also about, what lives we've touched and what stories we have to share. So I think I will start with Kashmira, if you can sort of share your thoughts, and then maybe, we can go to the others.
Sure. So thank you, Asha, and thank you very much for having all of us together. It's a pleasure always to share the stage with Kalpana. Divya, thank you very much, and it's a pleasure to be here. And thank you, CII, for always getting us always together. Madhvi, it's a pleasure to be here and have you on the call as well. And the power of networks and the power of the Indian Women Network as part of CII. I think all I can say is that what started as really small, and it was started by some really eminent people. I remember initially it was launched by Zia Modi, Mini Menon, and a lot of people. It was further strengthened, by Pallavi Jha and Raj Kamal from Axis Bank. And then we all got involved with it, Kalpana, myself. And we began to realize that I think primarily it's a lot of fun. I'm just going to keep it simple because it wasn't something that was stressful. You went for the meetings because you felt you contributed. You went for the meetings because you felt, you were allowed to be heard and you were happy to hear everyone else. And it was then that you realized this whole concept that you read about, this whole sisterhood and, power of networks and the passion of collaboration. And it was actually coming alive. So what we were experiencing is everything that people stand on stage and talk about. And really, it was just the power of friendship, the power of being nice, the smiles, the hugs, the warm coffee, and the fact that when you sat down and you chatted with people, whether you're on stage or you're in the audience, you realize that everyone has similar problems, everyone has similar highs. We're all celebrating the same thing. I mean, they could be in varying degrees, but we're all in it together. And, very often when you are not part of such networks, your little life is revolved around your organization.
And when you get into professional networks like this, you begin to realize that, oh my God, there is a whole environment outside of that. And these are all professional people, either who work for corporates or who are entrepreneurs or who are artists, or, everybody's doing the same thing. So we all share that bond. And it was this whole thing of coming together, of collaboration, of helping one another without realizing that you're doing it. So nobody's in it to, I have to further my business, I have to sell a product, or I have to gain something. It was all very simple. And it was the greatness and the strength of its simplicity that actually touched my heart and got me so involved. And having got involved with the Indian Women Network, you then move on to the CII platform. And like you rightly said, it was a great honor to chair the CII Maharashtra state. I initially didn't think I would be able to do it. And I remember when initially they offered it to me, I was like, no, I can't understand SME, MSME, manufacturing industry. I can't do it. And it was the men who convinced me. And, these were senior leaders who said, no, we're quite sure you can do it. And really, it was the confidence that the Indian Women Network gave us. It was all the leadership qualities that were further enhanced. Your organization obviously plays a huge role. And, this was just a platform which allowed you to project that and talk to people and, come together. So I'm now going to hand over the mic maybe to someone else to speak. Otherwise, I can't say everything that I learned, because all of us learned the same thing.
And I think I really resonate with what you just mentioned around, the soul sisterhood. And I've sort of experienced it myself. And none of us have been in it for an agenda, so to speak. But everyone being, sort of uniformly passionate about the cause of women and, development of women in the workforce. So Kalpana, you've also been with CII, and what are your initial thoughts around this that you'd like to share?
I think, I would totally agree what Kashmira said. I was just thinking of my first day, or rather evening, when Mini Menon, Raj Kamal, Pallavi, and we all were at CII office at Worli, the first, and it was quite interesting. It's a very nice small boardroom sort of thing, and we all were sitting there. We were at least 50 plus, if I'm not mistaken. And I was just listening to everybody, and I could realize that when, as Kashmira said, like when you're outside your organization and you meet other women, yes, probably they all are facing the same issues, and that sort of, starts resonating with you. So I think, I mean, I have loved my journey with IWN. The fact that this morning a friend of mine called up and he said, so what's the plan for this evening, birthday girl? And I said, I am actually going to spend with IWN team. And they said, oh my God, your love for IWN and passion will never go away. So that's all it says, right? At the end of the day, I think every sessions or every networking, not just the networking sessions, I think, the coffees and teas and lunches that we have had together, Kashmira, right? And it was never like, sort of discussing only IWN. It's everything else as well. And I think over a period, for me, it is like, we have made friends, right? So yes, learned a lot, not only about career, profession, various things, right? But also in addition to that, I think for me, it's also the bonding and, the friendship that we actually today also when we see each other on the panel or on this, it's like, oh, wow, you know. So it's that joy which IWN brings to me. For me, that is what it is.
Absolutely resonate with that as well. And I think you've been talking about physical meetings. Madhavi and I have been, sort of, we've been sort of in virtual panel discussions. Last time's WomeNation Summit, I guess there was an opportunity there as well, because we had about 1,000 people, and I think we have similar numbers this year as well. But we've been friends through that. We've never met face to face. But there's been this incredible bond with the Western region, sort of network. So Madhavi, would you have stories to share? And maybe once you do that, if you could start with the WomeNation Summit and, what your initiatives and key takeaways were as well, that would really helpful.
No, I think thanks. First of all, pleasure to be here. And, and I was very envious when you were talking, Kalpana, about the fact that you guys met in person, because we haven't ever met in person because, the world changed last year. But I think when I took over the chair as the chair last year, I think, Kalpana, you had briefed me a bit about the work that CIIWN does. And honestly, I was amazed with the length and the breadth of the work that was being done. And I honestly thought to myself, they're doing so much. What is the value that I'll really add to this whole thing? But honestly, it's been a great journey last year. I think for me it was inspiring to just hear stories of women from all walks of life. We had women from corporates, entrepreneurs, we had people from sports, from entertainment, and I think sort of I would agree with Kashmira that so our stories are very similar, and if I look at the people on the screen right now as well, I know that all of us have some story in common, with each other, and I think for me that was what was a huge learning. And I think this is what differentiates IWN from other platforms. So I think IWN it's really an India Women Network. It doesn't sort of focus on are you working, not working, are you from corporates, are you an entrepreneur, you're from sports. It kind of just brings women from all parts of life together. And I think the learning is even more. I'm sure if we all people from corporates get together, there'll be a learning. But just to get learning from other parts, I think really adds value for me. And I think I call it the power of mutual support, because the sisterhood part, I think for me is very real. I mean, I know that some people on this call had challenges last year, and I think the way the team supported each other was just outstanding. And we didn't really need to. We're not part of one organization. Each one's got an independent job and independent life. But for me, I think I forged deep relationships. I learned a lot. So I think that for me, Asha was I think it was a great experience. I'm a huge fan, that, right?
And you may want to talk about what you're doing right now as well, Madhavi, with the National Council as well. So it's just once you come into Indian Women Network, there are other networks as well,
Yes.
which you sort of go into.
So I'm now part of the National Committee for HR and Leadership. And interestingly, we also have HR conclave that is run every year. And it was so interesting. So so I'm the co-chair for the conclave. And when the first draft of the design went through, and the people working on it, unanimously the feedback that came through was we don't have a single session on diversity and inclusion. And for me, that was a very welcome change, and that came from the men in the group. And I thought that it's so great to see that the dialogues are continuing. People are aware that this is one of the key areas that we need to focus on. So I think my learning from the IWN I can take back to the National Committee on HR as well. So I think it's a huge it's a group that you can really leverage on for learnings. I think it's a safe place. You can share a lot. You can learn a lot. I think it's really amazing.
The other thing, apart from personal stories and sort of the sisterhood that we've been talking about, what I have also learned quite a bit in terms of the macroeconomic environment that women are in, and how systemically we've got disadvantages, and therefore the system needs to help bring us up. The women in the workforce. Recently, you shared about the worsting participation of working women in India, and India ranks 149th out of 153 countries. There's been a paper in The Economist that talks about how India fails her women, and there's a socio-cultural context that the article provides, where apparently it is a sign of upward mobility if the women in the household was not to work. So it's culturally okay for women not to work. And then the pandemic hitting us, and data saying that women across the globe spend about 300 hours on unpaid care work, and men spend about 50 hours a day, 300 minutes a day and 50 minutes a day on unpaid care work, and that creates time poverty as well. And the other thing that I sort of picked up was that there are these 3 M's of marriage, maternity, and mobility, where the spouse has to move because of a job, and women fall off the workforce as well. So just to kind of go around the room and talk about what we've done in terms of initiatives to overcome some of these macroeconomic factors. Can I start with you, Kashmira, from your time, and then Kalpana?
Sure, I think it'll be a bit of a mix between what we've done at CII and what organizations are really doing. And if I can put the social and the cultural part aside for a moment, because I think that that is also fairly individual, driven. But all I can tell you is that these platforms that we've learned so much from each other, because you have large corporates, you have SMEs, you have MSMEs, you have people who run small institutions and organizations, you have academicians, you have people who come from colleges, where we've actually learned of what have people done. And I think as corporates and as institutions, what we have to do is empower people, empower women to ensure that they continue irrespective of what time in their life they are. Like you rightly said, whether it's marriage, whether it's maternity, whether it's mobility, or whether it's any kind of other problem. How our organization policies align to support women so that they don't drop off. I mean, at the end of the day, it's everyone's individual choice. And you're very right about the socio-economic that, once you reach a certain stage, you don't want to work because you have, whatever, and we're not getting into that because those are individual choices that people make and that women make particularly. But I think as responsible organizations, corporates and institutions, we have to ensure that we empower our women to continue. So I know when the maternity policy was announced by the government, there was a big uproar. And I have been part of some of these discussions where people said, if you're a startup, you have a shoestring budget, how can you give somebody 6 months of paid leave? And let's be realistic, it is a problem, right? These guys are actually counting every cup of coffee that is utilized in the organization or every piece of paper that is used to print. And then you have to do this. You're actually kind of defeating the fact that why should I take the women? So there was a big mindset change which a lot of people, like people like networks like IWN had to make, where we had to keep reaching out to people that you can't ignore 50% of the population, because retail decisions are made on this, purchasing decisions are made, by women. So it's not a question, how will your business sustain if you don't get the value of what the women think? So there was a mindset change which, we had to support. And I spoke about startups, but that also happens in organizations. And it was on a similar platform like this when I heard one of the companies actually say that what we have done is the moment we realize that a woman is pregnant, we take that entire cost onto the books of HR. Because we don't have any other, like we're not responsible to balance sales and revenue, etc. So the business is spared of that cost. The person continues to work there till she goes on her leave. So they're not worried about how will it impact my P&L. And, so that was such a simple decision. In the larger context, the organization is not getting impacted, whether the cost lies with the business or it lies with corporate or it lies with HR. But it was such a simple, well thought out scheme. And this was shared and so many people actually benefited. And so I just wanted to share one example that, as companies, we have to empower this, even mobility. If you have a network of offices all around the country and you know that somebody is going to join her spouse, and I'd like to respect it. I don't want to argue on why should the wife not go with the husband or husband go with the wife. That's your personal decision, because that's a choice you make. But as an organization, are we able to give her the opportunity to say, oh, you know what, I have an office there, or, this is what we can do for you, because I don't want to lose that resource. Or if I don't have an office, can I reach out to my network? Can I float the CV around and say, look, this is a great person and a great resource, and why don't you utilize this? Person will be an asset. Yeah, so I think these are some of the pluses that networks like the IWN create, because you suddenly realize, even if you're an HR professional or a business professional, oh my God, every company has the same problem. So it's not just Deutsche Bank or Khaitan or Tata Capital or whatever, all of us have the same problem. And we need to find solutions, because if we do believe that there is the power of having a woman employee, because it's the diversity and the inclusion is so important, then we have to do everything to enable it.
And this is also where you actually sort of get the leaders of organizations into the conversation, right? And hear their perspective. Yeah. And we're uniquely placed to have that conversation. And we're just not, sort of within our own echo chamber in the women's network, but we're actually taking the problem, hearing the side of, the male leaders, and then trying to work out a solution, isn't it? And
very often, Asha, what happens is that people haven't thought about it. I don't think there's any malice. This is where the unconscious bias matter comes in. People just haven't thought about it. So I think it's up to us as, members of this sort of a network to actually hold up the card and say, hey, what are you going to do to the women? What happens here? I mean, I don't want to get down the toilet conversation we used to have years ago. I mean,
Yeah.
Kalpana is laughing.
I was there as well.
But it was a serious issue,
Yeah.
right? So till we began to ask to say, why do we ask like, where's the loo for the men? Yeah, why aren't we asking that? Why are we saying where will the women go? So, so I think it's up to us to call out that unconscious bias because we have become so conscious about it. And and this unconscious bias rests not just with the men, it rests with both men and women. Like today in the
Absolutely.
morning, I'm going to take a minute more to share this. CII, as all the multiple events which they had, they sent me an invite for some event, and I'm not taking the name. And I looked at it, and it was page full of photographs of very slurry-looking men, and I was really angry. So I picked up the phone and I said, "Why is this a gender-biased program?" And then I kind of set this panic rolling. But what I was most impressed to see, the convener of that program quickly set up an email group, including me, and I had nothing to do with that program, including all the men, and say, this is a point of view, and I think we need to respect it. And, thank you for bringing it to our attention. And it was so heartwarming to see one guy wrote, oh, I had recommended so and so, but you guys ignored me. Somebody else said, oh, I can get so and so, I can get so and so. And I also offered, I said, I'm willing to bring you the right women. It's not about tokenism. There are enough talented women all over in all spheres. And, by the end of the day, they've already told me that they've got not one, but 3 women now on the panel.
And for the WomeNation Summit is just the reverse. We've got tokenism for men, a few men sort of, and we need to kind of include them
We've
in the
debated this
conversation.
so often that we're very proud of the fact that this is by the women, for the women.
But actually, we need the men in the conversation.
It
Absolutely.
doesn't matter if they're not there. They can be on many other panels. That's okay. I mean, I'd like to respect the men who are around today. Thank you.
And the other thing around tokenism as well, one of the things that we have begun to do is to nominate, because we have senior women in our networks, we are starting to nominate them in the CII main body, state councils and Western region councils, etc. And that's sort of also bringing in, diverse viewpoints and perspectives in policy making and things like that.
Joining the dots, really. This is the power of coming together.
And Kalpana, you sort of spearheaded the mentoring program, and we had a network, a panel discussion just earlier that talked about the power of having role models, and so the mentorship initiative that you've sort of spearheaded. What are your thoughts around those and other initiatives that you've done while you were chairing the Women Network for Western Region?
Sure. So I'm just going to, before I answer that question, I'm going to respond to what Kashmira also said about mindset change, because that's so important, right? And that's what we learned at IWN as well, that you can't just have to tell your organizations and HR team and your male colleagues to change their mindset. First thing, it begins with you. So I think, I keep saying that when you talk to any HR or any organization empowering women initiatives, first you empower yourself, then automatically others will start empowering you. I think so that's very, very important. When we talk about maternity leave, I have told my colleagues and also even at IWN the number of times that we have discussed this. I think empowering ourselves is the first step towards this, and then automatically everybody else would follow. I think answering your question on mentoring, yeah, I have what we realized at IWN is that we wanted, and the numbers there and the facts that you actually provided just before this whole discussion, I think we realized that we need more and more women at leadership level. Okay, and mentoring is very, very key. I think so unless you have proper mentoring, now it could be in a formal setting or informal. I think we all have gone through that stage where IWN platform gives you that informal networking and informal mentoring session. What we decided at national level and at Western region level is to put that whole thing in program. And we decided that, that bunch of, CXO one level below that who had the leadership skills, we actually reached out to organization and they gave us the names of those, one level minus CXO who were willing to, be participating in this mentoring program. And we had actually very good mentors, not just women leaders. We actually had male mentors who were participating wholeheartedly, who were willing to be, and very, very keen to, participate in these programs, and they would have one-on-one sessions. So I think this is one thing which went very well, the whole mentorship dialogues that happened. The second important thing that we did on leadership side is that we actually reached out to, this is another thing which CII networks gives you, is that you can tap into that CII CEO, and the high level leadership network. And we had what we called, closed door conversations, and they all were so happy to share with us their leadership journey. So we would have around 15 to 20 senior women leaders there and having conversation, be it a male CEO or women CEO. And it was interesting to see that it's not just women who have been through these problems. Actually, because leadership is not about gender or whether you are a woman leader or a man leader. It's not about that. Leadership has its own issues. And that whole mentorship and leadership sessions, actually, we realized after every sessions that we had, hello, even men go through this. They are going through it now, even after reaching this level. So I think that was quite an interesting sessions we had. And the whole mentorship program, one-on-one, actually was interesting. We did it at all India level. And today I'm also in touch with a lot of mentees and mentors even today, and they all talk about that program, and they have stayed in touch with. So I think this IWN is something which gives you the long-term perspective and the relationships that you build, whether it is informal or formal settings. That's how I would look at it.
I love that some of these issues that we have are generic and it is not specific to women, and I think that there needs to be recognition of that as well. And what you talk about as mentoring circles sounds like a fantastic opportunity that we need to redo again, from the sounds of it. Madhuri, the theme of this year's WomeNation Summit is rising again. And the last year we had the first wave, and this year was an even more intense second wave, and we're just coming out of it. And do you have sort of direction? Do you have something to share around what we could do, and stories from your own organization potentially on how we could sort of support women as they come back into a hybrid work environment?
Thanks, Asha. In fact, if you remember, last year's theme was emerging stronger, and I think credit to many people on this call, for the theme and what we covered. And I think at that point we did go into a lot of discussion around, what are the opportunities for women to continue to work. There were sessions around, flexible working. What does it mean? And you're right. I mean, actually, we discovered that a lot of women actually were opting out of, work because of the pressures at home. So we did a lot of sessions around that. I think the one that I'm very happy about, of the focus that I'm very happy about last year was that was based on feedback, is really looking at, how do women handle the stress? And that was, I think, for me, there were very powerful sessions where, people spoke about the stress they're going through and what they're doing to manage the stress. I think the other thing that, other sessions that I think were very useful, the feedback we got was around entrepreneurship during COVID. So if you can't work, is there something else you can do? And we remember we got some entrepreneurs to come and talk about how they've made something a success and some things to watch for. On the current theme, I honestly love the theme rising again. I think it's the challenge, of course, is ongoing, and I think there is a need to rise again. I mean, as a society, as a community, and definitely women, there is enough research to show that COVID is actually going to bring down women's participation, over the next 4 or 5 years, which is really sad because decades of work that's happened will probably, I'm hoping that research is wrong, but people say that there will be a decline in the number of women, in the workforce, whether it's entrepreneurship or it's corporate sector or whatever. So I think all the more reason that IWN and CII focus on how do we make sure that we reverse that trend. How do we make sure that women continue to stay, employed? So that is, to my mind, something that CII IWN can really work on. So people who are already working, can we support them? People who have lost their jobs, can we help them with reskilling or finding new jobs? And it is possible if we all put our minds together.
And I think, like Kashmira shared, there have been instances where not in mass, but we have actually, because of the networks that we've had, when we've seen people, sort of impacted, we've been able to sort of place their resumes to other organizations and get them the roles as well. But back to your point around, sort of the impact to women, we had Priyanka Chaturvedi join in, and she spoke about how domestic violence seems to have gone up. And it will take another 100 years to kind of get to gender equality, but with the pandemic, without gender specific policies, we are not going to get there. So maybe Kashmira, back to you. You also had a view around the theme rising again, and if you would like to share what is on your mind around that.
I think, and again, I'm not really sure that this is gender specific, but the big change that we have seen with the pandemic, and I can't say post-pandemic because we're still on with it, is the resilience and the adaptability that people have shown. Whether it is men or women, and whether it's corporate or entrepreneurs, or you ran your own business, people have all adjusted. And I'll give you my own example. When I was talking to, whether it was ICBC, the Indo-Canada Business Chamber, or my own committee for international trade, we were like, what do we do now? Now we can't have events, we can't do anything. How do we reach out to people? And we said, no, let's go on the virtual whiteboard and write, what was our aim in any case when we started all this? So the only thing which has gone out is the physical interaction. In fact, to me, and I look at it only from a corporate perspective and these committee perspectives, we're doing the same thing. In fact, we're making it much easier. We're not spending time on travel and transport and the other or arrangements which really were a waste of time now when you look at it in retrospect. But we continued. We said the brand is to be kept alive and the interactions will continue. In fact, you got the best speakers from anywhere around the world, people who are so busy normally, who were all agreeable to come on the same platform. And I also found that a lot of people who would not participate, particularly women, because something was at 6 in the evening or 7 in the evening, were very happy to participate because everybody was operating at their own time from home. So while I know that there have been horror stories, but I'm putting those aside and I'm bringing the positive part out in this. And we found that there was resilience that was displayed. Most importantly, people adopted technology. People began to actually reach out and buy things that they never had done before. At some point of time, we women also like to have that superwoman impact. I can do this and multitask and do this. And people began to realize it's not going to work, right? I need to learn technology. I need to ask for help, and it's okay, and we will balance and we will still do what we need to do. So we have seen that, people have actually stood up and taken that call. They've continued work, they've done work from home, and organizations have been supportive by ensuring that, their employees were technologically enabled to be able to do that. So whether it was Teams or Zoom or Google Meet or like we're doing today on Cisco WebEx, that was what the organizations did. So I think everybody reached out and came to a certain platform. Yeah, I know about the figures that I've been reading and even about the domestic violence part, which is really, really so sad that this is happening today. And that's, Asha, when again, that whole thing about education and employment. Because when a woman stands on her own feet and she's financially independent, she also knows how to handle herself and when to take a call on what to do. So I think we have to continue. We can't stop. There's no stopping, whether it's a pandemic or an epidemic or whatever. We have to keep at it. Organizations and corporates have to have processes and policies that enable. We have to, as a network, ensure that we are creating these platforms for people to get together, to share views, to collaborate, to learn from each other and practice the sisterhood that we spoke about. And women also have to step up, to ensure
Absolutely.
that I'm not alone, I can do this.
Yeah, and I think we have used technology and been able to sort of expand our base as well. And the final question, I'm also conscious we're
Can I just say
please.
talk about just two things? I'm so sorry you'd asked me a question on what are we doing, and just want to share quickly at Deutsche Bank this year what we've done is I know it's not a positive in that sense, but what we did was we looked at there have been a lot of women who've lost their husbands because of COVID. So we've kind of have a program to hire women, who want to come to work or who've taken a break, or even people who are not trained but want to come to work. So we've done that initiative. And the other one we've done, which is kind of in conjunction with this, is Resume Your Resume, where women who've kind of given up their, corporate life or whatever, want to come into the corporate life, we've actually said we will hire you, we'll train you for 6 months, and depending on whether you're interested and you're able to perform, we will then onboard you into our, open roles. So hopefully it'll help even with small bits.
Absolutely. This is another key issue, and that's also another business case for why women should be working in the household, right? To diversify the risk portfolio if the spouse was to lose their job, and in more tragic cases, the spouse was to lose his life. Kalpana, one point that you had brought up was, it's not just about, what we can gain from benefit from iWin, but also what we can contribute to iWin. So would you like to share that, and then, we sort of can wrap up?
Yeah, absolutely. I think very, very, very interesting. Every time that at least when I started my association with IWN, what I realized, I mean, when I went there, first time when I went, there are so many platforms, right? I mean, there are hajar platforms like this. And I was like, it was afternoon, and I said, what is different here? Let me go and check it out, right? When I came back, I realized it was not as Madhvi started. It is not just you are dealing with corporate women there. You are also from all spheres of your life. You have entrepreneurs, you have NGOs, you have various other things, sports field, right? And more than anything, let me tell you, I have made fantastic friends with CII teams. You know, so importantly, I think so when I went there, I realized that it's not just what I'm going to gain. There are so many opportunities where I can contribute to the society, right? And I think it's at the end of the day, whether if you are interested in giving back, I think this is a fantastic platform. The opportunities that present you, whether you're working with NGO, Kashmira knows that we did 100 hours of change to start with. And we worked with various education institutions and universities with that. We actually also have done sort of post sessions for a lot of corporates and organizations. We have done quite a few sessions at the universities. So I think IWN platform is one where it's both, if I can. And I'm a lawyer, it's a very typical barter system. It's not about just gaining, it's also about giving back to the society. And the way I looked at it, the fulfillment after every session, whether it is with the NGOs or whether it is with the corporates or even this mentoring and leadership sessions, that it's not just about gaining, it's like, what did you give to others? And I think that fulfillment, you cannot describe in words. So I think this platform gives you both.
Even Akar. Remember
Absolutely,
when
Akar.
where we actually tied up with an educational institution and an NGO, and the students used to mentor the NGOs, and then all of us would come together to allow the products to be actually sold. So we would create those tie-ups with the corporates. So it
Diwali
was really
melas
like
and
everybody coming together to do good. Right. But the 100 hours of change was phenomenal. And I think you should really restart it again. Because like Alpana said, it gave a platform to our own members to actually share their stories and become, like role models and motivators for the college students and universities. And it was phenomenal. Because when we are talking of biases and gender and diversity and all, I think that has to start at that level. And it was phenomenal.
Absolutely. And I think what we're doing is continuing with the college to campus program as well. And what that does is provide members with the opportunity to sort of speak at campuses, mentor college students, etc. So we are continuing that initiative as well. And we sort of put this framework of the 3 E's and P, where the P is policy advocacy, to your point, Kashmira, where we sort of work with corporates for diversity and inclusion. And the E's are entrepreneurship, education, and empowerment. And empowerment, there is a bit of CSR as well wrapped in there.
The greatest P is purpose.
Yeah.
Peace, purpose.
I think what you are
I
doing
love
is
that.
really with a huge purpose and a huge benefit.
Absolutely. But thanks ever so much. And Sampada, if I may please, thank you so much for joining us and sharing, the journey of Indian Women Network. And we do have a video, if Sampada, if you could please share that. And we can sort
Happy
of wrap
birthday,
up.
Kalpana, once again.
Thank you, dear.
Yes, happy
Thank you.
birthday,
Happy
Kalpana.
birthday.
Thank you, Asha.
Thank you, Madhu.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Madhavi.
that, I'd like to close out. And one other additional thing is for corporates as well. We could provide leadership, development programs for your women together with POSH sessions, which I know is hugely popular. So those are the other additional advantages as well. But thanks ever so much, ladies, for joining. Really, really enjoyed the conversation.
Ranjana, Sheetal, lovely to see you too.
Yeah, hi, Sheetal. I was just about to say.
Thanks. I'll just give I don't need a formal vote of thanks. None of you need it, but I'll just do that. I thank Asha for moderating the session so well and all the panelists for their very insightful inputs. Kashmira, Kalpana, very happy birthday, and Madhavi. Kashmira has been a mentor all through for me, and I really, really appreciate her for her inputs. It was greatly inspiring and motivating, and hearing about the journey of IWN and the bonding which each of you talked about, and the story shared, and the differentiators of IWN, forging strong relationships, and the difference you could make about, whether it was maternity policy, unconscious bias, and how the virtual platform has also helped by adopting technology. To recap, it was an enriching inaugural session. It was really enlightening to hear from my esteemed speakers and a wonderful start to the two-day WomeNation Summit. Each of the speakers left an indelible mark on us with their candid and inspiring stories. Having spent over 3 decades in the corporate world of TCS and Wipro, many of it was so very relevant. I would like to thank all of you once again, and I would like to thank our panelists, our viewers, and all our sponsors, Kantar, Global Victoria, Blue Star Limited, Consulate General of Sweden in Mumbai, LIC of India, IKEA India for supporting the WomeNation Summit, and Moms of India as a streaming partner. I would leave with a quote of Henry Longfellow, which I really like, and I've tweaked it a bit. Lives of great men and women all remind us we can make our lives sublime, and departing leave behind us footprints on the sands of time. Thank you so much. And the first session starts tomorrow at 12 noon. Please do not forget to join us tomorrow at 12 p.m. for the session on creating a more equal world. Thank you once again for joining in. Take care. Good night. Stay well. Stay safe. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Hi, Preeti.
Thank you.
Hi, Preeti.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Bye. Thank you.